Roll call. Please.
Elaine Barton.
Here.
John Mungy.
Here.
Patrick Blees. Eric Brenna.
Here.
Rick Gilpin. Andrew Wise.
Here.
Lisa Wong. And we have Brandy Howe from WSB as our planning consultant, and myself, Lisa Ritchie, as planning secretary.
All here. Thank you. Next item is to adopt agenda.
I move we adopt the agenda.
Thank you. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Approval of minutes is next. Approval of the February 3rd, 2022 minutes and with proposed changes. Any questions on that?
The changes that were proposed in the packet were the comments that Elaine, the recommendations that Elaine has made. Did everybody have a chance to review those?
I was confused by one part of it on page 437. Towards the bottom of the page, it was approval of the minutes, and I had made a comment last time, at last meeting, and I thought it was the reverse of what this is showing as a change. If you could see the part that can you bring up the page I'm looking at?
No.
Thank you.
Are you referring to that first item under approval of the minutes?
Yes. It's not a super critical issue or anything like that, but just to have it
Can we
correct.
touch base right after the meeting, and I'll get it documented word
Sounds
for
good.
word of what it should be?
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All righty. Go ahead.
Are there any other changes to what Elaine had commented on, or would you like to approve the recommendations that she's made?
Yeah, look good to me. Anybody else?
Great.
Anything jump at anybody? That would have to say.
I can do that. If nobody else has any changes.
Oh, sure. Approve the minutes as amended. All in favor?
Well, I'll second that.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Dictatorship here all of a sudden. Second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Of course, we don't know on Zoom if anybody's jumped on or anything like that, correct?
Just for clarification, the Zoom is running, but they're just not able to capture that in the recording. So I will take a quick look and make sure. There are no other participants,
Thank you.
attendees.
Okay. And we go over public hearings. Commission business, action items and recommendations. Establish the 2022 Plan Commission Work Plan. Any question? Oh, staff does that one?
Staff will do that.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, staff, please.
Well, this is basically just a list I put together on the projects that are both in progress and what I understood to be desired by the planning commission as future projects. So the list includes for the in progress, the sign ordinance, downtown furnishings, downtown parklets, and then I called it park inventory, but it's that park plan that you've been working on with WSB. So those are the in progress ones.
You mean the parking plan or
No, not parking plan.
Parklets?
the park improvement plan? Or I'm,
Little spots where they want to put parks downtown, just areas that are open, parklets?
Yes, Candace Amberg has been working on that with you. Maybe that's not even a planning commission. It was
No, that's economic, I think, for us.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with, I just wasn't certain what that one was.
Yeah, it sounded familiar. That was from the other night.
Representative, or
There was one additional thing that I wanted to add. I think it's probably would be helpful to have on here for the future issues. Every once in a while, we've talked about addressing the short-term housing. Is that the right term? Like Airbnb sort of
yeah,
Short-term
short-term
rentals.
rentals.
short-term rentals. Yeah. So
I think
would
that
be.
was on from maybe a year ago when I think we first started talking about this with Eric. And I think that was one of the things that maybe had come to the attention of staff as well, that
Yeah.
it might be something to look at.
Okay, I can add that.
That one that occurred to me that we really don't, I don't think we've paid much of anybody has paid much attention to it, is the Wayfinding Plan. That's, I don't even recall when that was adopted anymore.
We brought that up in the task force meeting on Monday night, and Lisa was gonna look into finding that document and sending it my way, and then we can reference that in the downtown plan, and if it's something we wanna pull forward.
Well, and it's more than the downtown plan.
Right,
It's across this, essentially across the city, all the gateways, plus just areas around town.
Yeah, quick update on that. The process, it was in process. I'm not sure of the year, but one of the items was approved to be moved forward, and then council had questions on the remaining items. So I think some items needed to be revisited, or a new recommendation needed to go to council. So I think it would be good to almost start over. We know that one part of it is complete, but then the rest of it needs to be reviewed.
Yeah, part of that was the whole budget thing. I don't think there was at the time, that there was a desire to, just adopt the whole thing. So it was a little bit piecemeal. But I think it's also time to relook at it because things have certainly changed.
If I may, I just want to provide a little bit of information on the parklets. The only thing, to the best of my knowledge, that has been started on that is the conversation was introduced to you. I know Lisa Wong had provided some information material, and so we've kind of kept it on the to-do list because we didn't go in depth. We had that as well as the downtown design. Not sure if that was, if we need to set an ordinance for that, but whatever we need to do. And we're going to discuss the downtown design standards tonight. Okay?
Thank you, appreciate it. Is that all for you?
that's all that I have. So I can bring this back at the next meeting revised, and if it's something that would be approved, I'm not sure what the process is here. If it's just adopted and it becomes part of your minutes and you refer to that throughout the year?
Well, and even as it comes, when the council gets busy on budgetary things too, some things might require more meetings or longer, or who knows? But that's also, I think, helps them set the budget.
Sure.
And I also, probably at the next meeting, you'd want to get a sense of priorities too.
Well, we could discuss priorities now if that's appropriate.
I have a question. Is the work plan a formal document that gets filed and recorded so that, so it stands out there from a public standpoint as, here's what's on our generalized
I think
agenda?
the minutes do that. This was generally done back when all the commissions in December gave like an update to the council in person, kind of saying what got done the current year and then what the plan was for the next year. And that kind of formalized it a little bit more, but because the planning commission is a bit different than other commissions, they decided they didn't need the planning commission to do it, which made sense. So I think this is a good substitute for that, so it at least alerts council, and even kind of as a reminder to all of us and to staff of these are the things that, we've decided it would be good for us to look at. That's just a little bit of history, if that helps.
That's what I was asking. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to go over some of them then?
Well, this is really a discussion among the Plan Commission, yeah.
Thoughts, council,
Priority-wise?
committee?
One comment. I think there's some state law requirements about the zoning map.
Sorry, say that again?
I believe there's some state law requirements that we update the zoning map to correspond to the comprehensive plan.
I am actually not familiar with that. I don't doubt that that is the case. Usually there is Elaine says no.
Well, not with everything. It depends upon, again, the zoning map has to kind of show your zoning districts.
Yes.
So it's the zoning regulations rather than the map?
Well, no, what she's talking about is the map. But I don't think ours has been updated.
I don't think it has either. Generally, a zoning map, zoning decisions rather, must be consistent with your comprehensive plan. The zoning map doesn't automatically have to be amended. I'm not 100% sure in Minnesota, but usually in other states, the zoning map is the zoning map, and it can be amended based on the comprehensive plan. Or it could be amended at the time a property owner comes in, but generally you would look at your comp plan to see if that is the recommended future land use for that property.
Well, at the very least, I think it helps us be consistent in
I agree.
terms of what people look at and, you know,
Yeah.
whether they refer to a map or to the document itself. the zoning.
It would step forward the process of implementing your comprehensive plan to do the zoning map.
So I would see that as a high priority.
Yeah, and I think the decision there is just, we had some discussion about this, if you recall, when the 7th Street townhomes were done. And because there were two larger properties, and the question was, should we change the zoning map, you know, to show that each of those have been redesignated into a different zoning classification? And the decision was kind of, we don't have to, but there are consequences then when somebody looks at the map.
Right.
And it shows the old designation, it doesn't give a true picture. So I think that's a separate discussion when, you know, we actually have that on the plate. But there's been hesitancy to do the whole thing, you know, based upon the current zoning classifications, and that,
Do you have the history on the hesitancy?
pardon me?
You said hesitancy. Who is it political? Is it the city council that's,
This was kind of discussion with the staff,
oh,
because we had questioned, shouldn't we just get it updated with, because we had done that with several currently residential properties that were R1, and they got reclassified to R2. And one of the pieces of input we got, as a matter of fact, is how come I didn't know, you know, this property next to me was now this designation.
interesting. Oh, go ahead.
It's quite possible that, and I can't say for sure, but it's quite possible that that was based on possibly not having enough staff to do it internally. I know we do now outsource to WSB for our planning projects. So if it's something that, you know, we should,
Well, that was last year.
look
Was it last year we did the 7th Street, or the year before? It was relatively recent. And it's okay, I'm just saying, that's a decision that we just want to decide.
sure.
You know, if we'd want to do every property or
Yep.
some.
Yep, and
You're talking 7th Street where they're putting in the multi down on the other side of
South,
south, yes.
yeah, yeah.
It-
And then,
It would seem that it would make sense to redo the zoning map when properties are rezoned, or at some interval, regular interval anyway.
Yeah, might make it a little more reasonable if we do it every 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
well, and the most recent ones are
I'm
due to
not,
the comp plan.
I would recommend, if this is a priority, it wouldn't be that heavy of a lift staff-wise from WSB. It's really just an ordinance and a map update. And then in terms of future rezonings, I would suggest that anybody that would come forward and want to to update the map for their personal property, you would just do that at the time of the site plan review. Or in conjunction with, maybe not at the exact same meeting.
Yeah, some things, it has complicated things in the past, let's put it that way.
Maybe you could provide a quote, and then I can just confirm with our financial director that that plan would work, the
Sure.
budget.
Some of the other ones here, is this the potential future mining projects, is that where?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're almost, other than maybe the downtown design guidelines, because those are, I think, the oldest document we have that hasn't been updated.
Off-street parking, is that everywhere or a certain area we're talking for off-street parking? Is that what we're looking at doing?
I would defer to Elaine on this one.
Yeah, that has come,
Has there been some questions on?
well, there's been some questions on whether what we actually have for the number of spots, it really is up to date. Maybe I'll put it that way.
I think that's a really important one, because it, new development is going to be heavily tied to that number. And if we can get it more aligned with what is considered maybe more, a little more updated, I think it's just going to help with development, so,
And try to factor in the approach on multimodal.
yep. Yeah. So I'd say that's, in my opinion, one of the important ones. I mean, they're all good.
Yeah.
But
Because we did add quite a few over at that apartment building and different things like that too, so.
Well, I think the example everybody uses is always the Target lot, because it's just so huge.
Andrew, had you brought something to us, I think a few months ago, about separating out the parking component of a development from the actual apartment buildings or something, and to consider something like that, I think would be
yeah,
very useful.
yeah, that was part of the, I think it was the Green Step Cities that presented that I attended, and I don't know exactly how that would work in practice, but that was sort of the idea, is that if it basically is a way to provide a little bit more affordable housing by not tying the cost of parking construction to every single unit that would be in the multifamily project. So I'm not sure if that would be something that we would put into, it doesn't really seem like a zoning code issue, but it would maybe be something that would be more city, during the, discussions with the city to get TIF or, other things like that. I'm not sure exactly how that would work.
Seems like a real good policy discussion.
Yeah.
Where are we going, both in terms of making affordable housing, but also in terms of, are automobiles going to be as prevalent as they are right now?
Right.
Do we want to shift that way to
Yep.
Be interesting.
use less of our land for automobiles?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What would also be interesting to see though, from after the pandemic and everything else, how much ridership is. Is it going to be going back up, or have people now gotten back into the habits of, oh, I'm driving again, I'm not gonna worry about getting on a bus
Yeah.
or something like that too. Because I know that some of those lines, the North Star and stuff like that are down to not anybody hardly on them at all. So
Yeah.
that's another thing
Yeah.
to be considered too, because we all get in habits. Once it happens a little more than 6 months, it becomes a habit again.
But, people's habits have changed in other ways too, so it's such a big, it really is a complicated, kind of big discussion. But the one thing that I think potentially in code, whether that, can be addressed somehow, either as recommendations for what happens, during the process, and the other is just the concept of managing traffic demand on the part of an applicant, to what might we expect that what they might do that could help limit, the anticipated single car, let's put it that way, approach. And I know cities have done that. So it's just, there's various approaches that you can take that aren't necessarily mandates, but they are more a policy thing, is here's, what's discussed,
Yep.
and see what can be accommodated.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, bicycle parking is usually tied into these things very closely, and
Right.
suggestions of car share spaces being provided instead of a, traditional just empty parking spot. You provide our car or whatever so those are good
Yeah.
options.
So it's a big discussion.
Any other ones on the list that? Of course, bicycle's part of what you said in the.
That kind of goes along with it, yeah.
Kind of goes hand in hand with that
Yeah.
part of it as well.
If I may, that's one thing that we had talked about in our retreat with all of us council members, and that was one of the areas that kind of surfaced up, was the discussion about sidewalks, multimodal biking, and in the redevelopment master plan also, we're looking at what does development look like, and then also we're thinking about the traffic that could come from the Gateway Trail. So just to let you know that people are thinking about it.
I think it is more on people's radar now, particularly the council. I do think it's come to the fore as something that wasn't addressed as much previously. So that's a good thing.
I know it's on the economic development one we're on, but
Sure.
they're talking about when the Hillcrest Golf Course gets developed, how we're gonna get traffic, towards us a little bit more.
Yeah.
Be able to have our city as part of we can take a bike to North St. Paul, or we can go over there for dinner or something. So I know that's a big thing on, some of the future development that's coming, and try to see how we can, and plus over by the Imation behind there's a lot of houses going in over there too, which is straight down south in North St. Paul that turns into 40th over there, so it's a straight shot, not even going on the freeway, you go right across the bridge.
And we have, we're probably always going to have limited parking. Parking's expensive.
Yeah.
That's a expensive use of land.
We are building a parking lot as well behind K&J.
Mhm.
We were able to add, I think, maybe between 9 and 18 additional parking lots, so we're doing.
Well, and that one probably will get used more once it's, not quite so dangerous to walk.
Yep, yeah, we're looking for a pedestrian pathway. So,
I meant the potholes even.
that's dangerous too, yeah.
Any other things on that part of it? Does that help you out in what we're talking about, or are we're not really giving you guidelines, we're just kind of saying it all sounds good?
Well, I mean, it's your work plan. Well, it's your prioritization for what the Plan Commission should accomplish. So what I believe I heard is off-street parking and zoning map, short-term rentals and wayfinding plan, and I'm not entirely sure which is rising to the top of the list. It sounded like zoning, maybe the parking, and then the other two? Okay.
Yeah, that off-street parking kind of encompasses several of them.
Bike and sidewalk plan too was
Okay.
a good hit, I think.
Yeah,
That kind of wrapped up into the,
Well, I can say the
It's transportation.
wayfinding plan is gonna be a lengthy process, so if that has any weight on the prioritization.
I'm sorry?
The wayfinding plan, I think, is gonna take quite a while to accomplish what needs to be accomplished, so if that has any weight on prioritizing it.
I was kind of thinking of that toward the bottom, but maybe when you find it, you could just shoot a copy.
Oh, yeah, I can send that out this week.
Oh, okay.
thank you.
So is it my direction then, just to get clarification, to take these back and work with Eric to come up with some kind of budget? Is that what has typically happened?
I would think so.
Okay. I will do that.
All right, well, thank you. Ooh, just rolled down to a bunch of maps, so we gotta figure out what that's all about.
Oh, that's the zoning.
Okay. colors on that, man. Sign ordinance, oof, here we go.
Okay, so
Ding, ding.
I decided to spare you a presentation this time, and I thought we could just walk through how we did essentially at the last meeting. But we don't have the ability to show the screen at this time. So I can kind of go through page by, I would imagine that you guys all have it in front of you. Nope, you don't.
You did the, you're referring to the version that you have that shows markups.
Correct. So the version that was in the packet is revised based on the February draft that you saw. So the markups are what I've changed in the interim between those two periods. So the provisions, introductory provisions have not been amended. Definitions, we just added the word prohibited after billboard, added definitions for building sign, and that includes wall, window, or roof sign. Sorry, awning, canopy, marquee, projecting roof and wall signs. Added a definition for multifamily, single-family, and two-family dwelling types, and that will come into play later on in the district regulations. Took out the definition for temporary sign and swapped it for informal sign, per our discussion last meeting.
Yeah,
Non-residential use is any use that's not residential, and residential use is the single, two, family, or multifamily dwelling types. Rotating signs are prohibited, and window sign had an extra a sentence added to it to change the definition slightly. So now it reads, a window sign is a sign posted, painted, placed, or affixed to the interior or exterior of a window. For the purposes of this chapter, window signs are considered to be informal signs and are regulated as such through, though some may be more permanent in nature in terms of length of time. Said sign is displayed within a window. Right, okay.
One comment,
Go ahead.
sure.
or post and arm sign and pylon sign are defined exactly the same.
Yeah. I just noticed that same thing.
And, yeah, and I don't know if that makes sense or not.
I don't think it does. I think the post and arm sign is a post and arm sign, and it's tending to, I think the pylon sign
Pylon.
is on a post or column, but the arm component shouldn't be there.
Okay.
Both are freestanding signs.
That is a good correction, and I will revise that for the next draft.
And kind of connected to this is, what about the sign on a single post? Not on an arm, just single post.
That,
No, like a street sign, but in a yard. Where does that get categorized?
in a yard.
So if they just have a sign, just a piece of plywood with a post that goes in the ground type of thing is what
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Right. I don't know that that's,
Do we have a freestanding? Yes. I wonder if we could just delete the pylon sign.
You could. Except that it's a recognizable term for sign manufacturers as many times that they refer to them as pylons. So I think from that standpoint, it's a clarification merely for the benefit of people who may be putting up signs or designing signs.
I could
That would be the only reason to leave it there, maybe.
I could delete it as its own unique definition and then add to the freestanding definition that this includes pylons.
Yeah, it does. In fact, it already says that.
Oh, okay.
So you could take pylon sign out. Yep. Very good point.
Unless someone doesn't know what it
and
is.
as I read the freestanding one, it does include pole, so
Yep.
that answered that question I had.
Do you want to go like little section by section?
We could do it however you like. It's fine with me.
Right now, we're, just kind of going down, but section-wise, we have the what?
one of the things on the introductory that I think would be helpful to add is something that's specific to what everybody would understand to be the public safety piece of it. So what I had come up with was one of the purposes to minimize hazards caused by signs that are structurally unsound, interfere with sightlines, or unduly distract drivers, pedestrians, or bicyclists. Because everything else is kind of the visual piece of it, just almost the aesthetic and not the public safety.
Poorly placed signage, probably.
Well, yeah, the traffic sightline piece, but it's
Exactly.
also the poor, we don't want bad construction because those can be flying around neighborhoods and stuff. So it really is just to kind of get at that piece as well, because that's really a compelling.
I'm wondering if your concerns are addressed in the section general sign regulations under E, placement, and F, materials
Well,
and
what I'm saying
construction.
is we have those regulations because this is one of our purposes.
Oh, I see.
I'm talking about specifically adding that under A as a bullet
Okay, I understand now.
purpose section. And that kind of is why we have all these various standards.
Right, and maybe included in the most simplified version of public safety,
Yes, and that's what it is.
yeah.
Not just say public safety, but give
But then,
the
if,
examples.
but is there definition already, like you said, under the general regulations? Is there already definition there? We just don't want to put it in two places, that's all.
Well, I think I understand what the point is now. The purpose is X, and then here's the regulations to accomplish that purpose.
Right. It's the same thing as maintain and enhance the aesthetic environment. Well, that's what all the regulations are for. That purpose statement is so important when you're creating regulations because it explains, why you have them.
Yep.
So I shared some language with you. If you can just, you could tweak that if you want regarding the minimizing the hazards caused by structurally unsound, interfering with sight lines, and distracting.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah.
Probably something, to cover other stuff, or other safety.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah, a general statement to end it, yeah.
Yep, that's a good change. Any other comments on the definitions or the introduction? Okay, moving on to sign permits. Just some minor adjustments, added post and arm to the freestanding sign type. Application permit must be submitted. It must be submitted in compliance with the listed items, and it must be accompanied by a fee. Go ahead. Oh, I thought you had something.
No, I did, I'm hesitant. And because I'm going backward, because I was kind of looking at all my various notes here. And that gets at, as I was reading through the rest of it, I was questioning on some of these. Well, would this fall under the category of a sign, the way we've defined a sign? And our definition really does get into promoting the sale, promoting goods, promoting services, identifying a building, business, event, or use. But there are a lot of signs that don't do any of those things. And,
So we're revising the sign definition, is that where we
well,
are?
I think we could just eliminate the identifying a building, those specific things that are related to what you're going to read on the sign. If you see what I'm...
I do, yep.
And that way it encompasses, anything you can do. The snowmen that people have in their yards, that we support, North St. Paul Police, those kind of signs aren't doing any of these things, but we're regulating them as signs, as or informal signs, but we still have regulations. So that would just be my recommendation. I don't think we need to be that specific as to this is the kind of message a sign has.
I think that we're trying to remove the regulation of the kind of message.
Exactly.
That's one of the purposes of our task.
Yeah, exactly, to get rid of that stuff. And I can't, the other one I had was on off-premise signs. Let me go. And this was just, and this is so simplistic, I'm almost embarrassed to say it. But we define on-premise sign.
What page?
That's on page 21 of 37. And that's a sign whose message is related to the premises or activity on that property. So when we define off-premise, why don't we just define it the reverse? It's a sign whose message is unrelated to the premises or activity, because that's what it is. It's just the opposite of, essentially the opposite of on-premise.
That's very good. I agree with that.
Trying to read this like somebody who has no clue what we've been trying to do and just is going to open this up and try to understand it and then try to apply it to their own, what they want to do. I think those were my biggies, I think. Yeah. The only other question, well, actually, the only other question I had on signs was a painted wall design. It talks about that doesn't represent a product, service, or registered trademark or identify the user are not considered signs. Are other wall designs that do identify a user or represent a product or a service, those are signs?
I would think so, like a Coca-Cola mural on a wall would be
Well,
a sign. But
Depends on, I guess, you know, yeah. I'm trying to see, why does it matter what's painted on the wall from, again, from a purpose perspective? Could I, a trademark, you know, that's like a design of some kind, but so would a family crest be a design of some kind. I'm just trying to understand that piece. I don't disagree with, you know, what you're getting at. I just question, because that seems to me, we're talking about a mural. Whether it's you know, it has a trademark on it or it has some other painted.
My understanding is murals were prohibited or they're exempt.
exempt, yep.
Yeah, they're exempt. And we don't, this to me is defining a mural. But, I mean, kind of defining a mural. It's defining a certain kind of mural.
So would you suggest that that last sentence would, just removal of it would clarify?
That's my tendency. I don't know what anybody else thinks, because we don't want to prohibit them.
Yeah, I think that in combination with the mural being exempt would clear it up.
Okay.
You mean mural exempt, it means you don't need to have any kind of,
Correct. It's not regulated by this chapter.
it was regulated, but just not by this chapter.
Well, I'm not sure if it's regulated or not, but it wouldn't be in the sign ordinance.
Yeah, I think that's what we're just getting into with
The arts and culture.
with the new arts and culture. I mean, we don't want to prohibit them. And if we don't prohibit them, we have to be careful about saying, well, you can't have this on it, but you can have that. And that's what that was doing, which is why it was concerning me, the way we had it under the signs. So I think if we eliminate that, it kind of turns it into a kind of wall sign, a painted wall sign.
So if I wanted to put a mural on my garage door, that would be okay?
You could now. We don't regulate that. I think Al Worm used to give the example of you could paint your house with polka dots. I just want to make sure everybody kind of thinks we could delete that without, that sentence without concern.
I think so. The definition of sign is the hardest one to do out of this entire endeavor because of the limitations on content.
I think those were my Sorry.
Good stuff.
Okay, so back to the application or the sign permit process. So the signs are reviewed by the zoning administrator, and if there is a need for an appeal, we now have an appeal process built in.
Is there a redundancy in, let's see, under B, bullet 2, it shall be accompanied by a permit fee according to the adopted schedule. And then under C, number 4, all sign permits shall be accompanied by the appropriate fee set forth by the council and listed in the schedule.
Yes, that is redundant. I will revise that to take out C4, which would actually, it should be C2.
Oh, I see, yep.
Good thing we got your paper. Look at you go.
Thank you. That's, I should have talked to Lisa about, I rely on these fancy computer monitors, but sometimes technology breaks down and you need these bad boys. So thank you for that.
Okay, so moving on to regulations.
Well, just wait a minute, on E. Let me see, C, what's E on here, appeals from the zoning administrator?
Correct. Mhm.
It says shall be heard, is there timing in there? In other words, how quickly does somebody have to submit an appeal? And how quickly will an answer be available?
30 days is typical from the time of the appeal, if that's, or maybe we could have it be 60, just to build in adequate time for planning commission and council and hearing notifications.
Days to get the sign permit review.
I think, particularly because for businesses, signage is really important, so you don't want to drag it out any longer than you have to. So if there's a short time frame to appeal, and it's a pretty simple process, maybe 30 to 45 days or something is enough. I don't know. Well, of course, you have to get it to the council, too.
I mean, 60 would give you buffer as staff, but it would allow
So
flexibility.
no more than?
Yes.
But it also says will be heard by the planning commission. So
Right.
30 days doesn't seem outrageous if it only has to get to one.
Yeah, but we make the
Organized group.
recommendation to the council.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it says 30 days to get to the planning commission, then the council is added to that
Yeah,
30 days. So
Yeah.
that seems like it
can
would be
get
enough
tight.
time.
it can get tight. Although I think shrinking the appeal, the initial appeal step also helps.
Right.
If it needs to be, 5 days or something like that.
What do you mean by the initial appeal?
When
step?
they have to, how quickly do they have to get it in? I mean, can they wait 2 months and do an appeal? I wouldn't think so. Usually appeals, we have one already, and I thought it was something like 10, I can't recall what it was,
In your zoning ordinance?
in our zoning ordinance, yeah.
Look that up.
I think it's in zoning, either that or it's in the administration.
Oh.
I mean, D says 30 days for the zoning administrator. So this, to me, is just when you don't want to drag out
So
unnecessarily.
I asked this question. What does the appeal mean? Who initiates the appeal and what is that?
Applicant, the person who was denied,
Who appeals based on the decision of the zoning administrator?
right.
So, two time questions. One, do they need to appeal within a certain amount of time? That seems reasonable to include.
Right.
And I think then we, as a planning commission, need to act in a certain amount of time. And I think if you made each of those 30 days, that's not too bad. Because it doesn't have to get to the council in 30 days, it just has to be heard by us.
I'm just trying to think of from a applicant's perspective, from, the beginning
Right.
to the end process. I'm not going to know for 3 months, maybe, whether I can use the sign. So that delays me being able to order the sign. Again, I'm thinking now more from a business perspective is, for residential, I don't think it's as critical, but for business, I think it is.
And the 30 days might be an issue only because if they appeal and it's a week before the planning commission meeting, then we need to address it at that next meeting.
Right.
All that, whenever it happens.
Right.
It has to occur on the agenda of the
Right.
next meeting. Is that pushing too hard?
Right, right. Yeah,
But there's no condition here that the council has to see it. We haven't put a time factor on when the council has to see it. As of right now, what I was talking about was a time for them to appeal and a time for the commission.
You're breaking it down into two separate things.
yeah,
So they have to appeal within a certain amount of time, and the commission needs to see it within a certain amount of time. And the council will see it after we see it, but with not a time factor.
yeah. I mean, we
Does
can't
that make
control their
Because we
agenda.
can't control that agenda, but we could control our own. And it just seems like for a signage appeal, it's not that complicated an issue that we should be able to address it quickly.
So 30
And it wouldn't probably even be 30 days to
Right.
get to the planning commission.
Right.
Once the zoning administrator, or once the appeal
we got
has been
is
reached.
Is there an
30 days on D.
administrative issue in terms of notification on an issue like this? You know, is there an administrative issue in terms of notification to the public for an issue like this? So do we have to give a 10-day, or no, or what is it, a 10? 10 days?
I believe that it would require a public hearing.
And there is a 10-day notice on a public hearing.
I think having 30 days for the plan commission from the date of submittal by the applicant might be too tight, just
Yeah.
logistically.
that,
If somebody,
because it's-
if somebody were to have brought in an appeal on Monday, the next possible meeting would have been today, and that's not possible.
And it's not possible to do it with a public hearing or whatever else notification.
Or just logistically with
Getting it
staff,
onto the agenda.
because the agenda had been
So
posted.
you almost need to make it 45 maximum.
I think 45 sounds
I
good.
don't actually think a public hearing is needed for an appeal.
Wouldn't think so.
I don't think it is. And I guess I'm really just looking at from the time the D finishes. In other words, the zoning administrator has had a determination. At that point, they notify the applicant, and that would start the applicant's clock as far as, the timing of their appeal. So I also think setting a time that appeal needs to be presented to the city is important.
So how about 30 days, you shall submit your appeal, and then 45 days for plan commission to
I
act?
think it's less now.
It might
Or
be
other
worthwhile
matters.
checking that to
Yeah.
verify that, is there a public notification required?
I mean, you can do
'Cause
that.
If it isn't required, then let's go with 30 days.
The challenge with 30 is, as Brandy was suggesting, if somebody brought an appeal 3 days ago, then we would have to address it today. And is that a reasonable, if they brought it yesterday and we had to address it today, is that reasonable for us to do?
Needs to be able to get on the agenda.
That's the thing, it has to
So,
get on the
and
agenda.
that's factored in, but maybe that's something you all should noodle through, just to
if we have
just to
something else.
Yeah, what's
clarify.
realistic?
Yeah,
Because I know there's already an appeal process for zoning decisions, zoning administrator decisions. I know there is one. I just don't recall the timing, and the timing the appeal has to be filed. And that's with, of course, the zoning administrator.
so let's leave it at this. Make it as short as is reasonable
Yeah,
for it to come to the planning commission
Yeah.
and still be within whatever other regulations might be guiding it.
That sounds good. I'll do a
and if
little
even the
research.
30 days for the zone, for zoning to review an application, I mean, does it take that long? for a sign application? Do you think to review it and make a determination? Now I'm looking at D.
No, it shouldn't. No.
But it's allowed.
But maybe we could shorten that.
If we were to shorten that, I would suggest that it match whatever the building permit time limit is, and I'm not entirely sure
Okay.
what that is.
Okay, that seems reasonable.
Does that factor in if information is needed? Is that from the time that the application is actually complete?
I would say
Sometimes we
complete.
get a-
Yeah.
okay.
Clock starts as soon as the last T is crossed.
Is, for an appeal, can somebody appeal one of these permit decisions who's not the applicant? Like,
No,
no, it's just, okay, all right.
I don't think so.
Voice their opinion in public hearing.
But there wouldn't be a public hearing.
No, there's not a public.
Because it's just an administrative, I mean,
Okay.
if it's coming to this zoning administrator, I'm not gonna deny it unless it doesn't meet the ordinance. So if it does meet the ordinance, there's no reason for the public to come in.
Okay.
I can give you an example. It's the only appeal I recall that the planning commission never got. And that was from somebody who had a home that was stucco and wanted to reside their garage, but they wanted to use the new hardy board material that looks, that essentially simulates stucco. And the zoning administrator said no, because our code was it said it had to be compatible with the, house. So that came to the planning commission. It was not a public hearing or anything, because it had, there was really nothing there other than the fact that that decision was made. That particular one, the planning commission agreed with the presentation made by the applicant, which really was based upon what does consistent with mean? What's the real meaning of that term? Which is, that's the only one that's ever come. And eventually the code, we did end up changing the code to make it clearer what it meant. But that's an example of an appeal that doesn't involve a public hearing. It's just I don't agree, and here's why I don't agree, with the decision that's been made by this person who's just supposed to apply these standards.
Okay.
Hey, you drive through North St. Paul, I see a lot of 50 stuccos with vinyl garages.
Yeah, I know. That was, how that happened, who knows? Okay.
Any other comments on the permit process? Okay, sign regulation, yes, general sign regulations. Oh, no, no changes to that section, okay. District,
Could I ask a question on that, just in general? Are there some of these that apply to all signs, including what we're calling informal signs?
I would say that these apply to every single sign.
Okay.
Unless by logical reason that it wouldn't. And I don't know if we would have to state that.
Yeah, I was looking through them, and I had that impression because some of them should.
Oh, it says, that under applicability, all signs except official traffic and street signs shall conform to the provisions of this section. So we could add except informal, is that where you're going?
Pardon me?
Accepting informal would,
No, I thought they should.
Oh, okay.
As I read them, I thought, well, that makes sense, because you've got lighting in here and all of, and just based upon the kinds of informal signs we have, I thought they probably should. I just wasn't certain if there were some that wouldn't. But I don't see any. So if I were going to change it, I would just say all permanent and informal signs. I would just be clear, but all signs is fine with me as long as we know that's what we mean.
I can add those clarifications.
Remember, I'm just a person who doesn't know anything.
I have a sort of related question, and it'll probably come up later, but I was thinking about it the other day when I was downtown, and I was thinking about how are we regulating signs in the downtown overlay? Is it Is it in a separate, completely separate place?
It's in here in a
It's in
different
here
section.
later.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that got added, right?
I
Was
just
that
didn't
in there
remember.
before? I thought that,
I'm pretty sure it came from your original ordinance and I modified it based on that.
okay. And could I, on page 23 or 37 under E, just clarify E4? No sign shall be mounted on chimneys, rooftop equipment, towers, flagpoles, cooling towers. And by that, what's meant? Like for flagpoles, it's like you can't attach it to the pole, you know, tape something to the flagpole. That's what we're getting at there.
Yeah, I believe so, but I can see how you would misinterpret that to say that you couldn't have a flagpole. And nobody's going to hang a poster on a flagpole, it's too skinny.
Well, some people do, you know, probably, but I just wondered if that should even be there.
Remove the entire number
No,
four,
no, no, no,
or
no.
just the word
the
flagpole?
Flagpole piece, that seems just odd to include it there.
Good catch, yep.
I mean, maybe maybe we want to, I don't know, but,
Because all the other things mentioned are like structural building components where the
Right.
flagpole is kind of not part of that, so.
So the flagpole, of course, the reason why I asked this is as I drove through Oakdale, right on that 40th that I mentioned, crosses over, and that somebody had a big flag up there on the flagpole that said, you know, F.U. Biden. So it's like, now, what would our situation be for something like that on a flagpole?
it's fine.
That's fine.
It's the message, we can't regulate the message.
All right, I was just curious.
Yeah, that's why there's been a lot of controversy and you know, cities trying to enforce something like that they really can't, you know, and they,
I just, first time I ran across something like that.
I
so
know,
was like,
I
huh.
know. I've read it, I've not seen it. Yeah.
I can see ripple effect tough of something like that.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I was just, like I said, just
And that's when a lot of them are forced to relook at their ordinances. We're just trying to be a little more proactive, I think. Okay.
Exactly.
So moving along to the district regulations, so we've changed, we just removed the district specific and just said based on uses. Maybe the title of this should change too. Although we do talk about use, or districts later on, sorry?
May I ask a question from the previous? So in placement, E5, it says, "No sign shall be pasted or attached to utility poles, trees, fences, or other signs." So are the utility poles in downtown, like the decorative ones, like if we put a banner up there for the 135th anniversary, is that applicable?
We string it from the light pole, like across the street to the other light
Or
pole,
apply
maybe?
it on a light pole.
Or the ones we currently have on the light poles.
Yeah, I mean, the Arts and Culture Commission is looking at doing both types of signs, but they're kind of wondering what the ordinance is, so that's gonna,
That's a good point.
You know, when it comes to public property like that, could we have the same without permission of the city type language?
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
solution.
Well, it's like the banner thing where it says without permission. Can't remember that. When we get to informal, it's under there.
Cities are not excluded, but the city is in a position to
Give-
make a decision.
Because it's it's city-owned.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So if people are hanging garage sale flyers from telephone poles,
That is not allowed.
Technically, they should be approved by the city.
And it says you can't do that anyway.
Yeah.
I remember.
Oh,
We're also
They-
saying you can't do that on
Maybe in the right.
utility poles.
We have some language in here about
we do.
disallowing signs within the right of way.
Oh, good
Might
point,
be,
they're within the right of way.
Right away,
So
okay.
they're not city property, but within the right of way, we have an ordinance on that.
So no lost fluffy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's also an off-premise sign usually.
Lisa, are you good with that for the city as far as the sign?
You know, I'm thinking
Pillars?
about it, and it's like, how does the public view that?
Like we're
Like-
above,
Exempt, you know? I'm just processing it, but I'm not.
Well, I
We're not
would,
exempting
Or
anyone.
not, okay.
that's true, not exempting, but it's permitted with permission, and the type of sign that would be permitted would be for the public benefit. So I think that would be okay.
And would the procedure go through the professional planners, or would that be administrative?
We'd send it to you. I'm just kidding.
Or
Probably somebody that would oversee those types of facilities, I would imagine.
Public Works, okay.
Public Works will be putting it up probably, I imagine, or somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure that at capacity, Public Works has the ability to take on administrative tasks like that because they're down to 9 guys and they previously had actually 17 in the department.
Wow, it's a big cut.
I mean, that's been over the years, but yes, the fact is they're a thin crew. And so anything that we could do, or if we could have WSB do, like Ariana.
Well, we could do permitting, but in terms of,
Oh,
I mean,
making a
somebody would
decision, I
actually
guess
have
that
to,
would have to be a city decision.
Well, the city, is it a decision or is this kind of a?
Well, doesn't the city decide it now if somebody wants to string a banner? I mean, like the banner, it's the same thing with the banner. That requires permission of the city to string it across.
Recording in progress.
sure, I would, yeah, I guess I wouldn't know how, like, if you wanted to have an event as a city, how that would be handled. But if it would be an art endeavor, perhaps they would come up with a plan, take it to city council, have it approved, and therefore they've got the
Yeah.
permission.
Yeah.
In terms of who's gonna actually install these signs, that would be a different, broader
That,
discussion.
we don't have to worry about that, luckily.
But if it's on city.
More
Oh,
importantly,
correct.
more importantly, from the city's perspective, maybe taking the signs back
Recording
down.
in progress.
You know, because, you know, I think that's probably one of the more, you know, bigger issues is, you know, we ended up with a bunch of litter because somebody's put up signs and then didn't take them down after the event has occurred.
Would that be considered under abandoned signs?
Abandoned.
In here?
It would be
I don't
abandoned.
think so. I think we're getting, at least this is becoming confusing for me. Because the sign types that I was originally thinking of would be more permanent in scope, but maybe that's not what you meant.
So it'd be like a whole year across, maybe, you know, 135th, did you say?
So they're looking at the banner that might go across the road, and then they're looking at banners that go on the utility poles like we have now, but just a different design.
Different design on it?
I'm not sure what material they were looking at yet, so.
So that's something up there for a while, a year maybe, something like that.
Yeah, I think the banners right now have been up for a long time and they're fading, so they just wanna.
I would suggest that not be handled through the sign ordinance, but instead through an agreement between the Arts Council and the City Council in terms of how the duration, who's going to maintain it, who's going to remove it. Because that's a pretty specific situation.
Another option is to use the fire department, the front wall above the garage doors, because they've used that in previous years. But long ago, they used to string them across the street.
Well, and again, I think from the utility pole and the public property piece, I think the key issue there is just getting the city's permission. I think that application piece would have to, be suitable for something like that. And I don't know that we have one. But, again, that's a separate issue, but who takes it up and who takes it down? We're not going to address in the sign ordinance. That's going to be, for something like that, if the city's getting permission, isn't that kind of a part of it? Because it's going to be so dependent on what the actual purpose is. What reason, city property is being used, so to speak.
And if it's within the bandwidth, they're gonna have to decide if they can put it up, I guess.
Yeah. So,
Can I just ask why we wouldn't want to exclude that from city property?
do what?
Allowing that and not having to make a decision?
Why we wouldn't want to allow it?
A banner across the road?
We require it now.
For the public to utilize our, whatever type of, whether it's a pole or whatever they want to mount it on that is a city property? Is that, am I out of context here?
We've never let people just put their own signs on city property. That's nothing new. Because
So are
otherwise
we
you get a
saying- are we
proliferation,
saying
like
it'd
the
be
signs you're talking about.
exclusively- Are we saying it's exclusively something that the city can decide on and post?
For city signs?
For, what Lisa has been talking about, a banner across the road, or the banners hanging from posts and things like that?
Well, I mean, as I have it written down, based on this conversation, that we would only allow those types of signs to be attached to a utility pole with permission by the city.
Yeah.
So if we need to clarify further, we can.
That's when they're going across the street, and what we're saying now is if signs are going to be, attached on public property, the banners deals with going across the street.
I thought we were still talking about E.
I know, but now, so that's slightly different, because what
But
you're
there's
talking
also
about is poles
hanging,
and
yeah.
utility, utility boxes or whatever other property
Okay,
the city owns.
I wasn't following the original question then. So now we're talking about maybe it's a sign attached to a building going across the street. Is that right?
Yeah, I think
No.
we've got a mix of things. One is the utility pole and what ends up on those, okay? And we've said that in the right-of-way, there aren't any signs there. And I think we're also saying that there are no signs allowed on utility poles outside of that area.
Well, I have to go
I think
back
there's
to
an enforcement issue there.
regulations.
Well,
To throw something in.
That the fire department, the big fire, they put banners like when the
Booyah.
starts. So that's kind of our place to hang stuff in North St. Paul now, to announce things that are happening. Instead of going across the street, we just got it across the city hall out front here, that whole building, a big sign.
But that's on the building,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. but
That's
just-
different, yeah.
But that's where she was going with, instead of going across the street, having it on fire.
Yeah, oh, no, I understand that. I was trying to get at what Lisa was
banners.
mentioning. I was trying to go back to
Banners
where
on utility pole.
the utility sign stuff, where was the no attach? Oh, here it is.
E5.
That's the no sign shall be pasted or attached to utility poles. That's the one, Lisa, that you were referring back to?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think if you're okay with the suggestion that it just requires permission of the city, I think that does
for
it.
utility poles. City equipment maybe is almost what we want to say. Because,
We can add the word city equipment.
trees and fences, I can have a tree and a fence in my yard.
Oh, I see.
I could have a little utility box. Well, utility box isn't technically in my yard, it's in the right-of-way.
So we'll say utility poles and city equipment and then remove trees and fences? Or other signs?
Well, I was really just trying to focus on the utility pole. I don't have a problem with the trees, fences, or other signs.
Okay.
It's the utility poles because those are public. Trees, fences, and other signs aren't all owned by the, the city. But utility poles are owned by someone, whether it's the city or some other utility. So that's the one I think needs to be clarified, or in its own bullet, maybe. I don't know. How do you want? Well, we don't want people pasting signs on utility poles.
Even though maybe in their yard is really not a part of it, like we had a pedestal from CenturyLink, yeah.
Yeah, they are. Exactly, they are in the, that's public.
There, and it is in the right-of-way, so that's covered.
I know, what Lisa's getting at is there are signs. The city has signs on utility poles downtown. So the question is, this doesn't apply to city signs, is really where we're getting. Or if you want to do a temporary one and use the utility pole for that. That, I think, is the concern that she's trying to make sure that we're not prohibiting that somehow. Now, how you clarify it's utility poles, if you say, if what we mean by this is public property,
What if we added a 6?
yeah, I'm thinking
And
add a
just say-
6.
For public poles, the city may deem it's okay to.
Well, would need permission,
this,
if
Yeah,
somehow. I think it probably warrants one because it doesn't really fit with trees, fences, which everybody
So
almost,
6 would be that it's, for any kind of city property signage, it needs to be clarified by the city.
needs to be, approved, but like we do for banners, for over-the-street banners.
yeah.
Now, how much the city would want to approve, I don't know.
And what's the manner of approval?
Same way it is for the banners. I keep referring to the banner language because we've got that in there. That's in the, when we get to informal signs, that's in there. And I think it's worded another way that just says no, let me find it real quick.
Currently, we have not encountered that situation where
Right.
it had to be addressed.
Right, because we don't allow it. But this is, now we've got an arts
Technically,
council, and they might be wanting to do more than, anybody has done in the past. But the banner says, banner signs may extend across a public street only by permission of the governing body. So, if you want to say signs may be pasted or attached to public utility poles or whatever else, only with permission of the governing body, you could do that on the 6th bullet. Kind of mirrors the banner thing.
yeah.
And with us having a contract with WSB and not having an internal person that would cover it, I'm just trying to think of the whole process of how are we gonna decide if it does ever come up.
Well,
I'm
This-
thinking of like wayfinding signs. So like, let's say you eventually approve this wayfinding program and you want to install some of those signs on your utility poles.
we'll worry about that when we get to it. How's that? At least this gets us going, and then we can think about it a bit more, because it's an interesting question that, came
So
up.
6 would be, can hang from any kind of utility or any kind of,
no attached
No
to a
attached to there.
utility pole or other public, whatever you want to call it, without permission of the governing body.
property.
Yeah, public property,
Yeah,
maybe that's the easiest way to say it.
That way you're kind of getting everything in there.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Perfect.
Not radio. Sweet.
Okay, moving on. The district regulations. So now we're talking about uses instead of districts for or for the residential. And we have some proposed maximum aggregate sign areas listed. So 32 square feet for single family and two family, and then 60 square feet for multifamily and non-residential in all of the residential districts.
A broad suggestion would be to, I found it confusing to try to look at the dimensional standards in the residential district and in the non-residential district separately. I think if those two were combined, they would work well together, and we would be able to eliminate the non-residential in the R1, R2, and R3, parts of the table. So, the line.
Combine B,
So our
the table in B, or the first table.
first, table 2, sign dimension standards in the residential district,
Table 2, combine that with table,
4, I believe.
it should be 4, but it's D.
Oh, it's D.
It should, but I'll correct it.
Yeah, combine those two, they're showing really the same thing, but it'd be just showing everything all at once. And strike in the residential districts, 1, 2, and 3, strike the row that says non-residential.
Because those
Because
are in
that's
the next
redundant.
table, aren't they?
That's in the next table, yeah.
I mean, I think that's in table, one of these tables.
Well, you could potentially have a non-residential use in a residential district, though, like a
I know.
school.
You've differentiated between a use and a district, and I think that is maybe important.
Correct. That was why we made the changes to this. But I think you're right, we could simplify it.
Okay.
Well, okay, I know what you're saying, but then the next table, the mixed-use ones, because these are the residential uses, and then when you go on to C, what is that? Table
sorry?
C, on
C.
page 25.
Signs, regulations for non-residential use.
And all, the R1s and MUs are all included there, right?
So you want one table that's signs for residential uses, and you want a table that's.
Well, it seems
non-residential
that's what
uses.
we've got here, to me.
That's what we're trying to do, is we're
Yeah,
trying to differentiate
and then-
the use, not the district,
Yeah,
but then we're defining it within a district, which I think can work, but you really need two tables to make that happen, right?
I don't know.
A residential use versus a non-residential use.
Well, we've got the residential and the non-residential uses in both Table 2 and
Right.
4.
I know, and that almost, I mean,
I think it was, the reason it wasn't combined when I was doing this is for clarification purposes, because if I were to have made too many changes at once, it would have gotten confusing. So I can fairly easily, I think, make that combination.
perfect. I have a question when you made your notes. Under A. The 005A, the applicability, and that's the second sentence,
Okay?
where it says, temporary signs are regulated and do not contribute to the maximum aggregate sign area. And that applies to these tables, correct? So 32 square feet does not include temporary signs.
Correct.
Which should be informal signs.
Oh, got it.
Or informal, I'm sorry. But
Yeah, but your point, yeah.
But then when you go to, and I'm sorry I have to jump ahead, but then when you go to page 11,
11.
item 4, right at the top, or I'm sorry, page 30 out of 37. I was looking at just the thing. number 4 at the top says the maximum aggregate area of temporary signs shall not exceed the area standards in those tables. So I can have 32 square feet of permanent signage, even though the only kind I can have is temporary on the chart.
Okay, yep, I see what you're saying. Let's put a pin in that until we get to the informal signs.
Yeah. I mean, those two connect together.
They do, but they can't, I don't know if they should or shouldn't. They can.
We just, that's just one of those apparent internal inconsistencies to send me back to the same chart.
I would agree that is a confusing circular
Yeah,
reference. But can we agree with the statement that temporary signs, informal signs they don't have to adhere to these standards?
I don't know yet, because I'm not 100% sure. In the single family, the only thing that's allowed is temporary. The only sign type on here. That's where I was kind of going, well, wait a minute, can't have any of these other kinds. All I can have is temporary. So if I can have 32 feet here, can I have another 32 feet from this one back here?
Well, maybe that is the discussion. So we currently have 60 square feet as the total aggregate for a multifamily use. Is that too much temporary sign?
For which one now?
For just in general, temporary signs that don't have a designated sign type?
Are we looking at, where are you getting, why are you saying, you mean 64? I'm not sure exactly.
No,
what
I
it
have
is.
60, it can be 64. I'm looking at the table for all of the districts.
Well, no, I'm looking at 157.005B, the table there for residential uses in all districts.
Yep, and then I skipped down to number 2.
Okay,
And that's
so I'm
the-
looking at single family as an example, as the example.
Yep,
But if I look up at the kinds of signs that I can have, the only kind I can have is temporary. It's the only one that's allowed.
yep.
So I can have 32 square feet of temporary signage.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Where does my address sign come in?
I don't
That's
think
permanent
we're regulating address signs. Address signs don't count. I think those are exempt.
So I guess if I can only have 32 feet, and it says I can only have,
So I think what you're telling me is that I should put zeros there, or take it out of, or make it a non-applicable.
well,
Which makes,
I guess the reference to the temporary signs do not contribute to the maximum aggregate sign area of this subsection. Well, they kind of do, because we've listed them as a sign type. And we've listed a total maximum aggregate sign area. I'm fine with that. It's just, I want to make sure there's not some confusion as to they do or they don't. And it appears to me they do,
Okay.
at least for the residential. I don't know that that's true for others. But for this, the single family and the two family, neither of those can have anything except temporary. The others do have other sign types allowed. So yes, it would make sense that they don't contribute, to this aggregate here. But it's different for the one and two family.
I think for me, to implement what you're saying in the least confusing way, and you can disagree with me, would be to take the informal sign row out of that table. So basically nothing is allowed in single family and two family. And then make it non-applicable in the total aggregate area. Keep the statement that says temporary signs don't count. And then when you go down to that other section regarding temporary signs specifically, then you would have your own list.
It might be a cleaner way to do it. I
Okay.
mean, this one is a tad confusing.
Okay.
Sorry, I had my mic off.
That's why it's good to, give us the whole packet, because you can reference back and forth to see, does that match up with what I read before?
Really do like the fact that you tracked your changes too.
Well, I'm going to.
And I actually
Again?
like the tables. I mean, I think it lays it out simply.
So for the next version, do you want me to keep the track changes and add to that, or do you want me to accept them and then start fresh?
I think we wanted
How many colors do you got?
stuff we decided we should change. I think we should just change it.
Change it, got it.
Yeah. Change it and move on.
Think about it again.
I think one level of strikeouts is enough for me.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah, let's have green the next time. What color would you like?
I don't know. I don't know about that. It wouldn't be fair to the colorblind.
I was thinking purple.
Purple. Oh, that we don't see much.
Okay, any other comments on this section 157.005?
Now, oh, wait, okay, that's those. A lot of this was, the negotiation on particularly in the MU districts. Does that kind of match what you recall, Patrick? Because I think you gave a lot of input on that one.
Are you talking about the sign area?
The maximum aggregate?
I think I pulled that from your existing
Oh.
code.
'Cause
I mean, you had a lot of different, you had more than one maximum. I'm pretty sure I just selected probably the greatest. I can double check if you would like.
Well, they kind of also were on a grade by storefront or,
We talked about making there be some formula.
right.
Because if you have a very large surface area, face area of a building, and you say that the maximum sign size is 200 square feet or whatever it is, I don't know what the numbers are. Is that better, or is it better to say you can do 10% of your wall area? Because we talked about there being a 10% of the wall area not to exceed, or something like that.
That's what I recall, yeah.
That's in here somewhere.
But I don't remember what the numbers were.
Or maybe that's.
10% of wall area is a lot of wall area.
Yeah,
That would be too big a number, I think.
but when you look at some of the, like Public Works as an example, if that were facing a street instead of the trail, that's a long stretch.
Okay, here's where that reference is. It's on the top of page 28 of 37 for freestanding signs. The total area of one freestanding sign shall not exceed 1 square foot of surface area for every 1 foot of lineal street frontage.
Oh, okay, and then down under wall, right? Okay, got it.
Yep.
And then wall sign is down below. Okay, I'm sorry.
On that 1D that you just referenced, I think we need to maybe add something that also says, at the end of that sentence, something like, and adheres to the dimensional limitations in the tables.
I'm lost.
Because otherwise, if you get
You,
on top of page 28 of 37,
20.
E1,
Okay,
and, it potentially could be interpreted as being, okay, I got a 500 linear feet of frontage, so I'm going to have 500 square feet of sign, rather than it being limited to whatever the dimensional requirements are.
The face.
Pardon?
As compared with having a percentage of, well, but that's for a freestanding sign.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
freestanding.
I think I'm following what you're saying. So if you have that scenario where you have a 500 square foot potential, which of these two sections
Yeah.
controls?
Yeah, we want to be clear about it.
Yep,
And we want to still remain with the maximum that we have in the tables.
Not to exceed.
got it.
Yeah, however we calculate that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Kind of jumped ahead. Thanks for finding that. Got lost.
As long as we're right there, yeah.
Okay, should we
So,
jump back up? Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if we should go back up to the sign standards, dimensional standards for non-residential,
Or the
or for the M1s.
next section, you mean?
Well, we jumped ahead, so I was jumping back, but we can pick up
Where were
wherever.
you jumping back to?
I was jumping back to the table where it has the total aggregate sign area
Oh,
for the MU 1 through 3.
Okay.
So I don't have any additional information to talk about here unless there's questions.
No, I thought that was a good clarification, though.
Okay, so we can let this sit then until the next time, and if we decide that we maybe need to examine if these are the correct sizes. Okay, so the downtown overlay district is next, and this, I believe, is from your existing code, except for I believe I streamlined it. It does reference your downtown design manual.
So on 3C,
Yes.
could somebody have a plastic window sign? Or wall sign?
I don't think so, not in the downtown overlay.
Well, window signs are temporary, so are A-frame and sandwich board. I guess I'm questioning why they could be plastic or fiberglass, but a window sign or a,
What makes a window sign temporary?
we've got it, that's where we have it.
We've defined it that way.
Well, in the downtown district, how do you count the neon signs in Newman's Bar then?
Well, I'm just more wondering about this particular one. Neon is a whole nother,
Well, I'm just saying that's a window sign. It's a sign that's in a window.
I agree.
And it would seem to me that there are, I mean, that's just one example.
I'm pretty sure I accounted for Newman signs in here. I gotta remember how. I think that those are neon. It'll come.
Yeah.
It'll come. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
we'll
it's
get
not-
to neon later. I'm just wondering, because the signs you're listing here are temporary. The two examples are both temporary signs.
Correct. So I would suggest striking that. C. Okay.
Because I would agree for some permanent signs, maybe with a few exceptions, but not the way
Okay,
this is
so are you
worded.
saying strike the except A-frame signs and keep the plastic and fiberglass prohibition?
I'll leave that up to everybody to discuss. I'm just saying, this to me is a kind of a tricky one. Especially anymore, because, I don't even know all the various kinds of fiberglass or plastic. They might be very high quality, I just don't know.
I think it's an aesthetic issue.
This is an
It
aesthetic
may
look.
be hazard because it might deteriorate and blow around or.
Well, and this is also the downtown design.
This is saying that
so
the
there
plastic
are-
A-frames are okay.
Primarily aesthetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say we just get rid of the whole thing. But
Delete C or 3C.
yeah, that's what I would vote for.
I don't see much harm in doing that, do you?
Signs going on with the car show and temporary,
I know. We have paper. in windows.
Okay, that's the end of that section then, if there's no further discussion. Okay, so now we're going into standards for various sign types. So these have changed from the last time we updated the electronic message boards to include the text size based on miles per hour of travel. An inclusion of a certificate from the sign manufacturer that the sign has been preset to conform to the luminescence levels noted above.
And that luminance level, is that what everybody was thinking? I can't remember if we had a discussion about.
We talked about it. It's one of those things that's really difficult for staff to know.
Okay.
It's kind of like
Is
when
this
you,
kinda standard?
foot candles is standards. Yep, it is standard, but I wouldn't have any way to measure it. So it's kind of like I require, or I rely on engineers to stamp
Okay.
things that
These are
say.
all,
Right.
these are all signs that are going to be professionally produced.
These ones would be
They need
particularly.
to adhere to those standards.
Well, and I noticed E,
Document that they have,
Yes.
yes.
I noticed E has to have that sign manufacturer certification.
Right.
That was an addition as well.
Yep, that's what I was just referring to.
Yeah. Okay,
And it's referring back up to D.
yeah.
May I ask a question? If we're going to move forward with this as an ordinance, is this something that our code enforcement will be able to monitor? Because if it's an ordinance, they're gonna have to.
I'm not sure
Have to enforce it, yeah.
They're gonna have to enforce it. And
Oh, you mean your police department, if it's an electronic sign and they're
yeah,
changing
well,
the
it wouldn't
size?
even be the police department, it would be our code enforcement. We have two people that they have a full-time position as code enforcement. And this would be something that they would have to monitor.
Or operate on a complaint basis.
Yeah,
And if it's
that's what
on-
happens now.
If it's on a complaint basis, how are they going to determine whether or not it's compliant?
They'll have to get whoever would be able to do that.
You can
Yeah,
also go
you'd-
to the person that they're complaining about the sign, so we need to see some specifications of how this sign
Got it.
is and what we have there.
I would imagine you just send your intern out to the site and have them take a tape measure to it too.
Well, we
I
have,
think the luminosity.
Lumen, I talk about lumen and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Oh, that?
yeah,
The size of the text.
yeah.
I think usually when code enforcement goes out there, it's more educational rather than like, you're gonna get in trouble.
Enforcing.
This is the rules, let you know.
Yeah, it's a little bit less punitive, I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah. and
So the person who owns the sign should know who to contact to verify that it's still operating properly, so to speak. As far as even the luminance.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be my take. I'd agree with that.
Yeah, we've got a bit of a hole with that software component of it, if somebody does get the code, then they could change it, and then how do you enforce that? It's a problem. I'm not sure how to address it, though.
Doesn't mean you don't try to
Yeah,
regulate it, because
Right.
most people aren't gonna,
Yeah.
do something they're not supposed to do.
Yep. If it were really blatant, I think then it
Yeah.
would be apparent.
Yeah.
Just had one quick comment about C2 for the electronic message center and the number allowed. I think I remember we sort of talked about this before, and I can be convinced that this is okay, but it jumped out at me as being something, is one enough? Or, is there a particular situation where we would want someone to have 2 or even 3 or, of these light illuminated signs? It just seemed like
Like
one
one
would
on
be
each.
enough. Like if, something, say, a school or something has 2 street frontages, they could have 2 of these illuminated changing signs, and that just seemed like more than they would need maybe, but I know this came up before, so maybe I'm just looking for, does that concern anyone else, or?
So you're thinking one sign per property, so to speak?
Yeah.
Oh,
Of this particular type, just,
Yeah.
because it's,
I would say, I don't have any skin in this game.
yeah,
I'm just imagining like a high school property where there is a lot of land area devoted to that particular land use. If you have it only on one side, it may impact, those folks that would only come to one side of the building ever.
sure, okay.
But from a community aesthetic standpoint, I'd say have 0 of these in your community. So it's really a place-based decision.
but one per street frontage isn't bad, but you wouldn't necessarily, maybe you wouldn't want them right next to one another. So maybe there's some kind of distance. I don't know how you would do that when you're talking per street, but it's something to noodle on, maybe.
Non-adjacent frontage.
But does that matter either? If you've got,
It doesn't matter particularly, well, the school is a really good example. Let's say, for instance, Richardson wanted more than one of them. They are that property borders 4 streets. It's a full
Right,
multi-block
Right.
property, whatever, or the high school.
right.
If they wanted 2 of them, I wouldn't have any issue with that.
but they
Right.
could potentially have 4.
But they could potentially have 4, right, exactly. So where do you want to draw the line to put enough regulation in it so they're not like 4 of those signs all clustered in one area?
Well, and you have to keep in mind, local streets, there's really not a whole lot of value if you're looking for eyeballs, from a traffic perspective. So it's somewhat self-limiting, not entirely. But maybe the high school is a good example where they're off 11th and Margaret.
Or pick a non-public property, pick a Target store.
Yeah,
Big property, again, they could have multiples of these signs if we allow that per frontage scenario. Is there a reason we don't want that?
well, per street frontage.
Speaking of Target, I can't recall, I'll have to dig it up, but is there a height limitation?
On Pylon?
So would this be a pylon, an electronic on a
I
pylon?
thought there was one, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. It's probably 25 feet.
Yeah, I think it is.
Just think about that. Do you want a 25-foot tall electronic message sign outside on Target? Or any other public or non-public?
I think Holiday has one.
I don't know how tall theirs is. I know that Dairy Queen has one.
25, but it's probably at least 20, at least.
I mean,
25 is not really all that tall,
it's not really.
depending on where you are.
I mean, they're usually not right next to the street when they're that tall.
Well, if there's no concern about the height, going back to the number, I think it would be potentially a good idea to limit total number, maybe not have it before, but maybe maximum of 2.
Maximum of 2.
Yeah.
I
Max-
think that
yeah.
might be good.
Yeah.
Keep the frontage allowance, one per frontage, not to exceed 2.
Yeah,
Or
I like
something
that.
like that. That
Yeah.
would seem like a good idea.
So that would exclude a 2-sided sign.
No, it would be one structure. I can double check to make sure that it's not, that both faces count as one sign.
Yeah,
Both faces count as one sign?
yeah.
Someplace else, we talk about the way where the square footage is determined does the opposite of that
Okay, let's take a look.
Yeah.
by face, so it,
Each side of a double-sided sign shall be considered in determining the total surface area.
both sides.
So that's going to limit the square footage, but not the structure.
It seems like we're defining a sign as one sign, and in other places, we're defining it as two signs. When we measure the square footage, we're counting it as two signs, and when we talk about it as a sign, then it's one sign.
Well, there's the structure, and then there's the face. One measures the sign face, one measures the structure itself, that kind of you put the sign on, so to speak, the face
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
That's how the two are different.
Okay.
But it does get tricky in the terminology, I think.
Well, yeah, and we could say sign structure instead of just sign.
Well, and maybe we could be clear in the table, too, that it's don't we define how it's measured, how the sign face is measured?
We do.
Right?
Yep.
So maybe if we're clear, this is the sign face that we're talking about in some cases.
In the table?
Yeah. Because that's really what we're talking about, right?
Yes. Well,
Because that's how we measure it,
yes.
other than height and stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that makes some distinction then between the two.
There's, let's see, what is this, page 22, 157.004, number B, it does describe how you calculate the square footage there.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we do have to kind of distinguish that we're talking about the face of the sign.
In there,
Yep, I think I can say face or sign area
yeah.
on the table,
Yeah,
and then within the limitation of the EMC, it's structure, not face.
right. Okay.
Okay, then the freestanding sign discussion, are we okay with that measurement, the 1 square foot of surface area for every 1 foot of lineal street frontage? In River Falls, we had 2 square feet of sign area for 1 foot of street frontage. That seemed like a lot, so I dropped it down to 1 for your community.
Seems like enough.
And it's still limited by the
Maximum for,
Correct.
maximum
Yep.
anyway.
Yep, it will be when I add that.
This is a case where somebody could have a freestanding sign on every street frontage. It just couldn't be an electronic message sign. Correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
One freestanding sign per street frontage.
Yep.
So in the Richardson example, they could have.
What is
2.
Richardson? Is that a
In
school?
theory,
And
they
then
could
2.
they could have 4.
Well,
Signs.
4 total, yes, but I'm saying if two could be
Yeah,
electronic.
And they could have building signs, too.
Yes, yes.
right.
Okay.
Randy, will you go through and replace the temporary
Yes.
with informal? Okay.
I thought I had, but I guess I missed a couple.
It's in there a lot. It's hard to find them all. You have to
Yeah,
do the
I thought I would have
universe.
done find and replace. I'm surprised I missed that. But yes, I will definitely do that.
Thank you. Does, on page 30 of 37, near the top, I think that is
Oops.
number 3, do we want to have a time, a duration, a 30-day limit on an informal sign? I think that's what it's saying.
It is.
Okay, so I think we just strike the whole section that says something about how long that sign can be there, because
You're talking
that was
about
some of-
3 up there at the top?
Number 3, duration. On page 30. So we had a big discussion last time about, well, how do we regulate how long people have a temporary sign up? You gotta attach a time to it. By striking the 30 days, then we're saying, the only thing we're looking at here is, the kind of sign that it is and, that it's, people generally understand that it's not intended to be permanent.
Unfortunately, that's really what this is getting at, and it almost seems like we should just call them non-permanent instead of, again, it's like the reverse of permanent, non-permanent, instead of informal, because that's really what we're talking about here. I don't necessarily have a problem, because we are talking about signs that typically are not going to be constructed, be permanently planted somewhere, and that's really what we're getting at. That doesn't mean it couldn't stay there for 90 days before it starts falling apart. But I think that's where the maintenance piece of it comes in, isn't it, as far as making sure that they're still looking good and...
I like that. I think that's,
Let me just hop up to
non-permanent
maintenance.
instead of informal.
That's what it is.
Okay, so here's a maintenance statement. All signs and components shall be kept in good repair and in safe, neat, clean, and attractive condition, and in compliance with the applicable building codes. But hold on.
Is that back in the regular sign?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
that's
way
why I
back at the
wondered if that
top.
applied to all.
It does. Yes, it does. Okay, so that reinforces what we were talking about earlier.
It just gives us an option if it's really bad to say, hey, that
Right.
sign is not kept up, instead of saying, oh, it's 31 days, take it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
looking ratty.
Okay.
Well, and some just, they're not permanent because of the way they're attached, essentially is what it boils down to.
Okay, so I hear us striking B3 and changing the name of them to non-permanent. Okay.
So now you can change informal and temporary to non-permanent.
2 searches.
You're welcome. I like it.
That in green.
Trying to keep you busy.
Yeah, there's some. I remember a house over, I was in Midway, they had 2 pumpkin lawn bags with leaves in it, and then they put a plank over it and put the manger scene on top of that. So you never know what people are gonna do.
Yeah, I like that.
And it was not permanent.
Exactly.
Could we go back to page 29 just quickly, the very last item? And this is again now for the non-permanent. If ground mounted, meaning essentially they're stuck in the ground.
I'm not sure where you are.
Okay, page 29 of 37. Very
Oh,
last.
got it. Uh-huh.
Very last, item B.
Okay.
So ground mounted would essentially be you've stuck it in the ground.
Yes. Unless you can think of a better way of saying that.
Freestanding? I mean, it's temporary, it's not gonna be pylon.
Okay.
But it says the very last one, D, is, it shall be set back no less than 10 feet from the property line. What property line? All property lines, the front property line? This,
Whatever property line it's close to.
that's what I'm,
If
it
it's on a
doesn't say
corner,
all.
It's from both.
Well, it doesn't say all
Right.
property lines, it
It's
just says
also,
the.
it's also, I mean, if you're envisioning a sign like I don't know what kind of thing it would be, but maybe it's a contractor sign because they're doing a remodel on your house.
Well, it's my
Something like that.
temporary 8 by,
They're never,
Or sign.
they're never set back from the
Yeah.
property line. They're always sitting
I
out.
hear you, I'm just saying, we've said they're gonna be set back no less than 10 feet. I'm just trying to verify, what property line are we talking about?
So all property lines. Okay.
No, I don't know if it's all. Honestly, I'm just asking, did we mean front? Did we mean the front property line?
Well, I guess it depends on where it is.
If they're on a corner.
Yeah, if they're on the corner, it's either property line. But But I think my point is, I think it's unrealistic for those non-permanent signs to be set back 10 feet, because it just doesn't happen. People
Well,
don't do that.
Again, it's what we want people to do, and depending
Right.
on the sign, especially now that we're talking
But
about,
it doesn't get enforced.
okay, but we're talking about 32 square feet. If that's
Yeah.
what we go with, that can be a large sign.
Yeah.
You want it back.
Yep,
So I don't see a problem with having it.
true.
You know, if nobody says anything or nobody complains, then it's not an issue for anyone. But if somebody does, because it is very poorly placed, you want some way to enforce that.
You say from this, can you measure from the street instead of the property line, because people don't know, okay, the.
I don't have a problem
city
measuring.
owns this.
Right.
Then
From
mine
the
starts
street
here,
edge.
where do I start?
Well, we've already said you can't put them in the right-of-way.
Right.
So,
That's true. We don't know what the right-of-way measures from the street
Right.
in all
It
cases.
varies in every
Yeah.
case.
it varies.
So if you say from the street.
I'd hate to admit where our property line used to be. It was completely out of whack. We could,
I don't have a problem with from the property line. That's what we've,
yeah.
you know, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just trying to clarify, do we care about the side property line? I know we care about the street.
Yeah, you're saying, does it matter if it's near the side? I don't think the side property line matters so much. If it's a front, if it's a corner, it's essentially two fronts.
Yeah, I'm just, if we mean front, I would just think we
Yeah.
need to put
About
front.
any street face.
Street
property
facing
Yeah.
property line. That would probably be the way to do it. Then you've covered the corner.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to verify. But it did bring another question to mind is, do we care about the backyard? What if I wanted a bunch of signs in my backyard? Does anybody care?
Your neighbor might.
Let the neighbor complain. I think the likelihood of that happening is,
The question I'm asking is, are we really regulating signs that are visible from a public way?
yeah.
I think we are. Didn't we?
I don't think we say that anywhere, and I maybe we need to.
I think we do.
I would agree. I don't, you know, somebody's backyard.
Okay, so would that go into the general sign regulations under applicability, like visible?
Yeah, I think it would be right in that,
Okay.
in the front there. Well, no, in the introductory provisions under B.
Right. That might be better.
Make it clear right
But this
up
is a
front.
regulation, though.
No, that
Oh.
we're regulating
Just a statement.
signs that are visible from a public way. Public street or other public way. That could be I suppose that could be a path or a park, too.
Public right-of-way.
But that seems more like a regulation, so it would go under the, not in the introduction, but in the general regulations.
Why?
Because we're regulating only those within the public right of, or that are visible.
I know, but why not put that right in the introductory language? I mean, under B, any exterior signage to me includes the backyard. It's outside my home.
Okay.
I just think that would be the place to clarify, you know, signage that's visible from a public street or however you normally would put it.
Public street, public property?
I kind of hate public public property.
I'm trying to envision a commercial application where you have parking in the back, or you have an alley, or
Well,
something something other than the neighbor's property.
You know,
line,
the
you know what I mean?
street or alley might, I mean, that's one of those tricky ones. But yeah, I'm kind of lean toward street because if you look at 7th and then you do look at the homes behind 7th, you know, on the other side of the K&J parking lot there, I mean, I don't think anybody's got any signage back there. the question would, depending on how you develop, you start getting into, if you have rear entrances, then potentially you've got signage, but,
There is some discussion about Sepola Boulevard or being multimodal and, maybe even developing the alleyway.
right. That's in the current redevelopment master plan, is to turn that thing into something pleasant. I mean, maybe that's just something to noodle on, but it occurred to me that,
So we decided how far from, there was 10 feet from the street?
from the property
a-
line,
Yes.
street facing,
Pre-facing property line, yep.
Do you know where their property lines are, though?
that's,
Well,
Is their business?
they
they
should,
should.
because they're not
They
supposed
should
to
have
be
a good
digging.
idea anyway.
And if they don't,
I mean, then you also have to have code enforcement come.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, but only those complaint-based ones will have
Yeah.
to comply with the property line issue. Okay.
well, that's okay, that's the way it goes.
Okay.
Oh, for the city.
I got one for you.
It's not usually that hard to find them. I mean, the city used to just loan out a little finder,
A property pen finder?
well,
I don't.
whatever you call those things. Like if you do beach combing and
Oh, metal
a
detector?
metal detector type thing.
Ours is so weird with that loop.
Okay, so anyway,
Page 28, letter J. On window, it says permanent windows. I think if we strike out, maybe we should talk about striking out permanent, because isn't by definition, window signs are informal or non-permanent. You don't want to automatically call them permanent.
Oh.
that's the way we've designed them, or we've defined them, yeah.
Okay, so this is what I was talking about with regard to Newman, I think, because those window signs, those neon signs are in the window. But I think that the discussion that we've had tonight, by changing the informal to non-permanent, I mean, it's not permanent. Okay, so strike J? Got it.
Strike the whole thing.
I think so, because, where are we? What is this?
Well,
Hold on.
we don't want windows totally covered by signage.
I was just thinking maybe just window signs are limited to 1/3.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Or is that not something?
it needs to move to the
I
non-permanent
mean, you're on page
section.
28, right?
Yeah, it's just in the wrong section now, so I'll have to move the window to the non-permanent section and then remove the word permanent.
Okay, I follow you.
Okay.
Why are window signs considered non-permanent?
We define them.
That's how we defined it.
Yeah, but why?
Because a lot of times they are, they're both, it's like,
A lot of times they are, but they aren't necessarily.
they're not all,
Well, what
I
would
agree
be,
Yeah.
what's an
Just like
example of a
all.
permanent one?
The signs at Newman's.
Well, I know, but theoretically, it could just be unplugged and moved at any time, as opposed to a permanent type.
Okay, that's
Structure.
the difference, is
that's not the only difference.
structure of the.
I could put the name of my business on the window. I could put my hours of operation on the I could paint them
Yeah,
on the window.
right?
That's essentially permanent. I'm not going to be changing that routinely. So it's like to me, it's like a wall sign. Window signs can be permanent, or they can be temporary, or non-permanent. They can be either.
I think that's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Maybe that we shouldn't differentiate permanent or not.
Well, we do with wall, right?
What would be a permanent window sign then?
No, we don't.
Like painting on it, so it's
Paint
you have
on
to
it.
scrape
paint
off
on
of
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you get somebody does their letters.
Instead of
on it.
hanging a sign on my building, I
That to me is non-permanent,
What is?
the paint.
If it's something that can be
that's not easily removed.
unplugged, the electrical, you're considering whether or not you can move it or remove it.
Yep, that's non-permanent.
Okay, here,
But they're not, they don't have to be.
I can do it, however, I just need a decision.
Does it matter if it's permanent or non-permanent?
Does it matter?
Does it matter for the window space that we're trying to regulate?
I don't
I
think,
think what we care about is how much, well, here's where it comes into play, I think. If you were to calculate if you were to draw a box around every neon sign that's in Newman's window, that occupies probably way more than 20% of the applicable area. And I don't know that that's desirable for those big storefronts that you have people walking on Main Street trying to look in and shop, window shop.
And that's the purpose of limiting the window. I mean, that hits on an interesting point. But to me, that's not the only example of how you can have a permanent sign on a window. You can do it. And neon isn't the only one. I actually personally think neon should be under the illumination section rather than it's a sign type. But that's a whole different thing. I don't have a problem with allowing them, certainly as non-permanent, but
Oh. Sorry to interrupt you, but the neon signs, 20% of window area is how it's written here.
yeah.
Yep.
Right. But they don't even have to be in a window. They don't have to be outside for sure. I mean, they could be, who knows? It is just one of those difficult ones to deal with, but I tend to think it's more illumination than sign type.
Okay, so back to window signs.
You want to know permanent and non-permanent?
I don't know that it matters.
To me, they're like wall
We could just put it in
signs.
both, and then it's up to the interpreter, and then just give it a standard area requirement.
To me, they're like wall. I can put, a temporary sign on a wall as well as I can put a permanent sign.
So in the temporary sign standards, the limit is 25%. Non-permanent. Is that acceptable? And if so, is it acceptable for your permanent
I think,
window signs? Okay.
25?
no, I think we do need to ultimately deal with the neon signs.
Yeah, we
Yep.
haven't.
Okay, let's get through this. I
Yeah,
just need to
there you
get mine.
Maybe we should just go, did we already get by that whole section? No.
Okay, so 25% max for windows, non-permanent and permanent. So then
Newman's is,
Newman, I don't know if Newman's is gonna comply
Non-compliant,
or not.
the way it's written.
It-
And is that something that matters to us? That, well, and that's why I was asking about it relative to the downtown overlay. Should the downtown overlay allow something different from what is allowed elsewhere? And I think it should.
Here's a point about your downtown overlay. It doesn't actually cover the area that Newman's is in. It's more on the periphery. It's very strange. If you look back at the
Really?
zoning map.
In the middle,
Really?
Yeah, it is. It's in the downtown.
middle of it.
No, I remember I showed you this last week or last month.
No, it's covered by the downtown. Again, we haven't updated the map.
It
So you
should
say,
be part
you're
of the
saying it's
pink
supposed, oops,
on the map.
Yeah.
The MU1 should be.
It's
that's shown
MU1.
there.
anything that's MU1. Okay, that we should.
Yes.
Well, and that's
We
all
know for the
right. I
zoning
mean, we
map.
do, but
Yeah.
again,
So does it
just hasn't
include
been
where we are
updated.
here at City Hall too? That part of the pink along Margaret?
that goes up, Margaret.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. And that's the zone, that's the underlying zoning district.
And
The
that,
downtown overlay
right,
goes on top of that.
Right.
And
What-
that crosshatch should have been in there.
right.
I think that was,
It's on the zoning map, but it doesn't cover the whole pink area. It covers the part that is on the,
On the
I know,
periphery,
and it
yeah.
should include that section between whatever's missing. I don't know why I don't know how
So-
that happened,
So my
but it hasn't
point,
been updated.
my point about the window signs, the neon in the windows, that kind of thing, is in the downtown overlay, it seems as though there should be, to me, a greater flexibility in that regard.
okay, what if we, I'm gonna go back to neon is a kind of illumination. So if we put this under the illumination section and also referenced when it's, if it's located in a window, XXX. Instead of, we haven't defined it as a sign type. We don't have any limits on it, essentially. But I don't,
require someone making the decision to have to know to check two different areas? You would think that they should be able
not if we take it out of here.
Yeah, and just put it underneath illumination.
We don't have it listed anywhere as a sign type, except here. It's a type of illumination.
and it would not be listed under the window ordinance?
Could just be under the illumination. I'm just recommending that just because these are the only standards we have, for just two things.
The illumination standards talk about backlighting, external and internal, and that they can't be closer than 20 feet from the nearest residential property. I thought, do we have anything on flashing signs?
We prohibit them.
Okay, so I would say we could just eliminate the neon completely, and then it's just a window sign. Who cares if it's neon or not?
I don't, yeah, to me, it's one of those, I'm not sure why we have it as its own sign type. It's just a different way of illuminating a sign.
So what about, even if we take that away for Newman, do they still have too many signs?
Yeah.
They might.
Yeah, I mean, that
much.
doesn't change anything, but it doesn't,
I think the downtown district becomes important.
Yeah.
Because, we've got neon signs and windows outside of the downtown area.
yeah. Yeah.
I think we want to regulate
The number of
the amount.
signs, yeah, the amount of window that can be covered. I mean, I like the limiting the amount of window
Right.
that can be covered, but I don't know that it needs to be different for
Why,
neon versus some other kind of sign.
why do we care?
Downtown, does it have to be different?
Well, we can,
Raise my hand.
we'd have to go back to the downtown
Would
district.
Eric just ask you, yeah,
Yes,
why,
go ahead.
why do we care, like, say you pick a number, 25%, why do we care if a business owner has decided to cover it with 26% or 40% or whatever the number might be? Because you use the example of, people walking in or walking by, looking in the windows. If the business owner has decided they'd rather plaster it with a bunch of neon signs, do we as the planning commission care about that? And why?
It's a visual, it's, number one, it's a visual thing. It's also, to some degree, a safety thing from just being able to see into the interior of, like, a storefront is really what we're talking about here. That's what's going to have that. That, to me, is the kind of the underlying basis for doing it.
Are we gonna have Newman pull signs out of the window?
No,
Is that
not, no.
how somebody complains? I just don't know what we're doing to try to do something.
Will make a lot of changes to the businesses that may currently be over.
Those are non-conforming. They stay non-conforming. That's what happens when you change code.
Even for non-permanent?
Make them permanent. Again, I'm not a believer in that non-permanent thing for window signs.
I think also, like, one thing for us to consider is sometimes aesthetics are very subjective and maybe, Newman's with a bunch of neon signs, that's appealing to some people.
Yeah.
Or, so I would caution over-regulating and really considering some flexibility, especially since now we're trying to develop our downtown. We want to signal to people, like, come do business here. So if there are too many regulations, that's gonna.
Yeah, there's a balance. I mean, there's a reason you want people to be able to see inside in some cases. Now, maybe in a bar, that's not as important as maybe a shop that's selling,
Well, you got
whatever.
lounge
Why
has
do we
maybe
care?
one window, if even that.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's ask this question then. because I'm using specific examples that I'm aware of. Brothers Bistro. They have a sign, a neon open sign that I'm expecting they went and bought at Sam's Club that flashes. Doesn't flash like crazy, and it's not wild bright or anything like that, but
I have the answer for that. You just tell them nicely, by a phone call or a letter, turn the setting to not flash.
because you can
You can, yep.
as non-flash.
Or it has to be 8-second duration, I think.
But that's another example of a kind of
Yeah.
window sign.
Right, it is.
I mean,
But it's one of those things that if we're changing the ordinance, we need to be thinking about that as another
oh,
example.
yeah,
Of
yeah.
how do we want to, like Eric just said, do we care? You know, so,
Here's an instance where you might care about window signs. I know that a lot of gas stations or liquor stores have those advertising signs, and they will plaster them over the entire window if they can.
Well, and also now when you're talking about downtown, you're also trying to get a mix of residential and business. So to some degree, you don't want lights flashing into residential windows. Let's, put it that way. The neon at street level is less of an issue. When you start getting up higher, it becomes more of an issue. So, I mean, it is a balance, but we're not going to, I just think we ought to kind of decide the approach we want to take and then
Well, I agree, like we have
let
it,
Brandy figure it out.
no flashing, I agree with that. I mean, I think everybody kind of agrees not to, that one, you said you can turn off and stuff like that, but as you said, there's more people downtown.
As far as the window coverage, though, I mean, let's think about it maybe for, until the next meeting and
I think that's a good idea.
kind of come to a conclusion, understanding a place like Newman's, once the code is adopted, if somebody is not in conformance, that's a non-conforming use. We don't make them change anything at that time. They just can't make it worse, make it bigger. So that's also something, but when you're talking a new business, then you start thinking about, okay, what would we prefer that look like?
Or
You
do
know.
we care? How much do we care?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly,
Are we restricting kind of a creative
right.
process of
Right.
giving character to our downtown?
Keeping in mind, this isn't,
Collective.
windows aren't the only places you can put a sign. There's lots of kinds of signs that can be very creative, that are hung from a building.
Like Lisa said, it's hard to regulate or place ordinances around things that are subjective.
Yeah, it is. That's why you,
It's not
Try
just
not to.
Newman's either, there's a bunch of businesses that might be affected if we pick a number and make a bunch of non-conforming.
I don't think there would be a whole lot.
Roddies or Sidewinders or anything,
They don't have windows.
They don't have windows.
I suppose.
Polar
Another-
Lounge is the same way.
Yeah, we've got too many places without any windows on the street.
That's not to say that they couldn't.
Put windows in,
Yes, they could.
be nice.
Yes, they could.
See him scurry. He's got a lot of stuff in his windows,
He's got goods.
yeah.
I mean, we've got a lot of different buildings, which also makes
part
it
of it.
difficult. But I would just say, don't get so caught up on neon that we lose sight of, there's all kinds of signage, and there's perhaps some other types we could be encouraging. Talking about the downtown design manual, there's lots of stuff that people can do.
I mean, the number of cats in the window at that one place,
Yeah, I know. People stop and look
Oh,
in
they
that
love 'em.
window, I'm telling you.
the car show, yeah, they're all watching them bounce around.
Yeah.
They have cat cafes too, where you can adopt cats and have
really?
coffee. Yeah. There's one in Minneapolis. They're all over the country.
Never heard of them.
Could have one.
Here in North St. Paul, maybe.
You could get a pretty cool sign for that. Okay.
right. Then
Okay, so moving on.
Could we go up to banner sign?
Banner. Yes.
Duration.
Yep.
What if there's not any specific event? I mean, when we say banner sign, it doesn't have to be for an event, correct?
I don't know. What would a non-event banner sign be for?
Happy birthday, strung across one tree to the next in my yard.
I guess, would there be a situation?
It'd be temporary, right, or non-permanent, I'm sorry.
Do we have duration on other?
We have it on a few, I think. Yeah, we have it on feather sign. Well, the whole idea is not, of non-permanent.
Right, so maybe eliminating duration for everything in the non-permanent?
Well, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, because this is just, we don't have any, it's just the reference to an event when there could be non-event banner.
Oh, so maybe saying installation, 21 days after installation?
And we don't require a permit.
And why?
So who's gonna, how do you enforce that when you
Oh,
don't
okay.
have a permit?
Okay.
And why would the banner sign be 21 days, but a feather sign is 90 days? I mean, it seems very random.
It is random.
Well,
And
there's
these are the
some
kinds of
method to the madness.
Again, it just gets back to how it's installed, not the, and the same with feather, we have 90 days per individual sign per calendar year, but of course, I could change 4 signs out. I could take one sign down, put a new one out, and I could have the sign up all year long.
Right.
A feather sign, that wouldn't be the same one, so I'd be okay. Right?
Yeah,
That's
well,
right.
the fact that we're not requiring the non-permanent to have a permitting process really does make the duration tricky for them all.
It's kind of like a, please don't do it any more than that, but we have no way to stop you.
Isn't the main issue the deterioration? of the
The
sign?
maintenance is the main issue.
Faded and it's looking ragged.
recourse we have.
But we have regulations for that we
Yes.
can go and
Yeah, exactly.
manage that.
So I think
so
that's the way we
to
regulate.
take the duration away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless there's a
regulate based on
specific
quality.
reason to have it. And I
I
haven't,
don't think there is.
I
What
haven't
about the
spotted-
political
From an
signs?
enforcement perspective too, it'd be much easier for our code enforcement.
I don't think it's possible if there's no permit. Who could prove when it was put up?
Got it marked like tires like they do in the street.
Right, mark the sign somehow. And then political sign, number 7 on that page, that was deleted, right?
No, we've got it in here still.
It was deleted from the definitions.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, yes.
this is maybe like, where could we put this?
We were talking about it being a campaign sign.
Or just an
It's an
election,
permanent.
it's an election year sign.
Okay, here's a question. If we're eliminating duration from the temporary signs,
We have to have this because we limit size
but we're limiting
and number to
size.
some degree.
We could just delete number 7. It defaults to the general sign because it's not listed as one of these specific.
Yeah, I was thinking that's where it belonged anyway. The C, that's where that really,
But there's
I-
a time rise, and this one is 10 days after election, they gotta be gone.
yeah.
So
know, but
I'm suggesting that we delete it, and then it would default to B, which is anything that's not listed as a specific sign type below. And then it has to adhere to the square footage requirements.
I'm not following.
So if you scroll up to B, under the informal signs, general regulations,
Okay, I got B.
So this was like the catch-all for if I didn't have a name for a non-permanent sign, it went here.
Okay,
So it would just, we would eliminate it, and then it would be treated as one of these.
well, okay.
And we don't really care about,
Are you talking political sign?
yeah.
I'm only talking about item C under political sign. That's all that matters.
So,
Yeah.
can I ask a question about the political sign?
Yep.
How does the state define that kind of sign? Do they call it a political sign, the state statute?
No. That's-
Whatever the state calls it in the statute, that's what we should call it. I think that's important.
I thought we were,
Non-commercial sign exemption.
That's the state statute?
Yep.
That's what we should call it.
Well, and that's what it says anyway.
We should
all
not call it a
non-commercial
political sign. We should follow that statute as.
We have,
closely
we
as-
just haven't named it the same.
I know, and why bring confusion by calling it?
Well, I think you just put that as a bullet. You don't need to have, it doesn't need its own number. It's just a bullet under B.
Could be.
Yeah, I think that's where it belongs.
Okay.
Because that is
okay.
an exception to any limits that, or numbers that might exist.
Yeah.
But if we don't call it a political sign, then the duration statement becomes moot because we're referencing before and after an election.
I thought we were gonna be silent on that.
From
Well,
my
we talked about
asked.
removing limits or durations anyway. This is the exception kind of thing.
Exception is that we're following state statute.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could eliminate this and
You
still
actually
follow
could
state
eliminate
statute.
it, and we would still be in compliance if we
Right.
have
The
no
state trumps it, yeah.
limitations. But we do have limits potentially on numbers. And this
limits on
allows
numbers, but
any number of signs
Oh, I see.
and size. So our size limits don't apply either. So it does matter to make that clear.
Well, this does say for political signs, total of 32 square feet.
I know, but I guess all I'm saying is we don't want to call it a political sign. I think we just want to address what it says up under B, because that applies. As you go down these sign types, these are all potential types of signs you could use. And there's no point repeating it after every single sign.
Number of sign square, so you have teeny ones up to how many, and or one big 32 square foot one that says whatever.
And now you can
The
have
point-
more with
yeah,
this one.
And the point being, you could have a feather sign that's a campaign sign.
Absolutely, yes, you could. Yeah, you can, all kinds of them.
Okay. I got it. I think.
Give it a
But we'll
shot
find
anyway.
out. Okay.
I'm just imagining that we're going to have, in essence, what I think of as political signs continuously.
Well, we have them now. There are some out there still.
There are some,
Yeah, yeah.
but I think that we want to send a message to people that are running for office or running for a campaign that, in general, we want those things down.
Yeah, that's
And we
what
don't
have
want it
that.
continuous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially because you can have clumps of them
Yeah.
Okay,
altogether.
did I misunderstand the direction? I thought I was keeping A, B, and C, removing the title, and then putting it up under B.
You thought you were keeping what?
A, B, C under 7?
I think you can just get rid of 7 and take C and put it up under the general regulations.
Okay, so A, 7A, B, go away, got it.
If you don't have that type of sign there, you don't need the setback thing and the limits.
Okay.
I'm going to have to see how that looks.
Yeah, we'll see how it looks, right? Poor Brandy.
I got it, it's good. It's not going to be green, though.
No.
Purple, right?
Be red.
Oh, more red? Okay. But this red that we have now will be gone.
Yes.
Right.
All right. Next is prohibited. We added flashing signs to the list.
What page is that on?
31. And then exemptions, I took flag out. And that is, oh, and then we also added on the final page, the substitution and severability, which came from your current code.
Oh, no, wait a second here. Could I ask a clarification, please? On exemptions, number 4, seasonal decorations.
Oh, the pumpkin / manger scene?
Can I have a big inflatable pumpkin?
Yep. You can have as many
So
as
when
you
we
want.
say inflatables, we don't mean all inflatables.
Do I say
mean
inflatables?
certain inflatables. Could we define what, more specifically, what we mean by inflatable?
Prohibited.
I know it's defined, but it's,
Well, we call it a sign. It's an inflatable sign.
I know, I hear you, but how the way we define it, portable or fixed mannequins, characters, dummies, or other shapes that are inflated by any method
Yeah.
that may or may not contain logos, texts, or any other insignia designed to draw attraction. Again, it's just one of those, we were talking about those big
Yeah. We're banning Rudolph?
things. I don't, do they have another name?
So we're prohibiting inflatable signs, inflatables in general, but then we're allowing seasonal decorations.
Certain inflatables. The way inflatable is designed,
Seasonal.
which, again, is there another term for those?
Blow-up sign, fan-driven sign, advertising inflatable.
You could have a 2-for-1 and a snowman's sign blowing up.
Well, I think, again, what we're talking about, those are those ones that have the wavy arms, and
Yeah.
I just don't know if they have a specific name that would make it clearer what we mean.
Yeah, incredible inflatable flailing arm tube man.
There you go.
But, that from a television show. But why are we excluding inflatables? Why are we prohibiting inflatables?
I know, it is a tricky one.
Gorillas on top of buildings.
Rick,
I suppose somebody
Didn't
could
want
do,
them.
What if somebody
Halloween
did
pump-
a gigantic
Giant-
inflatable snowman?
yeah.
What they do.
then that would be a seasonal.
No, not in North St.
Not necessarily, not in North St. Paul. it
It's
isn't.
always winter in North St.
That's
Paul.
right, it's not seasonal.
Oh.
And you could have any kind of inflatable that would not be seasonal.
Right.
When it comes, decoration supposedly, that wouldn't, it would be my season, but maybe it's not yours. The season goes all year.
Stay puft. Stay puft.
Maybe I understand what we don't want. What I can't get at is how to describe it. I don't think so. I don't think so. Because for the most part, decorations that people put out, they're not that same kind of, 20-foot skinny balloon thing with, stuff waving around. Well, I think there's a name for it. I just don't know what it is. Maybe we can, work on that. Because I think we all know what we,
The fact that it moves,
Regulated for what reason?
What the purpose of it is.
can't do that.
I think we need to differentiate. We need to figure out how to coordinate the inflatable signs being prohibited and the seasonal decorations that may be inflatable are exempt. We have to figure out how to get.
Well, because we're going to prohibit one, I think we just need to be really clear what is being prohibited. Do you,
I was just curious, I know the ones you're talking about, like the used car lot ones and they're moving.
The Gumbies and
Yeah.
that stuff.
Is it because it moves? Is that why we
I
maybe?
think that's a big part of it. Not that others can't, but they don't typically move.
I have a inflatable frozen snowman at home that like, it's just stationary. Once it's
Right.
inflated, it just stays there.
Right,
I think that's less obnoxious than the big moving arm one, so.
right.
Is that an avenue we could go, or it's like the ambulatory signs?
If we can, describe it that way, or if it actually has a name, I think that would make it a whole lot clearer. This is the kind of inflatable we're that we're really prohibiting.
That's a lot of the aesthetics, but I think there's also, the giant gorilla on top of the building, which, how do you distinguish that from your snowman,
So you wouldn't want a giant gorilla that is a permanent sign structure,
No. Probably not.
but you can have it.
Well, is it inflatable?
Let's just say it's not.
Well, he was saying it is,
Yeah.
It's like the rotating octopus on the roof.
Or the polar bear at,
That's a,
on
have-
Highway
We
61.
have sign size standards. Why not just restrict it to a sign size standard? Figure out a way to say it can't be any bigger than this.
Then,
I don't know
some
if we're gonna
people
solve this
cover
one
their
tonight.
entire yard.
let's think
Sit on
about
that
it.
one
Yeah.
for a
This one's a
little bit.
thinker.
This was
Right.
supposed to be a short meeting,
Yeah.
John.
Wow.
I'm gonna tie you up in a corner if it's gonna be a short meeting.
Wow.
Boy, I feel like I'm at home now,
Watch
John.
out, he's got the power.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, better to do this now than when we have a public
Bring the
hearing.
rope.
Let's
Oh, that's good.
put that one on the side and think about it, because I don't know that we have, I'm not sure, from my perspective, I know what I would want to regulate. I don't think the flailing arm guy is necessarily a bad thing, depending on where it is and how it's used. So, so does it really matter? And if so, where do we want to draw the line?
And to
Just have to think about it.
play devil's advocate on your artistic comment earlier, I see art and gorillas.
That's true.
Always something. You can think of it.
Maybe.
I'll do some research and see what I could come up with.
What are they doing in River Falls? Any gorillas?
Oh,
Yeah.
Got it all
I
written.
don't
do
think
what
we
they
have it
don't do.
figured out.
If that were going to be allowed as a temporary sign, it's one you'd want for a very short period of time would really be the answer to that one. One day, that's it.
Well, that is it for the sign ordinance, unless anybody has any final thoughts.
Thoughtless now.
My mind is totally blank.
Just a really quick.
I got to use my gavel.
For this type of change, does the planning commission ever run these things past code enforcement do they get to weigh in on it at all? No?
That would be staff's deal, but, the code enforcement,
No, there's no process in place for anything that's done in the commission, within the commissions to be reviewed by any other party other than some things go to council.
Okay.
So the fire department came to our council meeting and gave us some of their most, violated codes and stuff. So I think that might be helpful if I share that. Maybe?
and it's kind of tricky because you try to set standards that are enforceable, but we also know it's complaint-driven for the most part. So
At this point in time, but that could change.
it could. I don't see it happening. You'd have to go proactive, and we've not done that. Not
that
that it
the
couldn't be
woodwork-
done.
One question that comes to mind, being as that I sit on these different committees and I'm hearing different things about people wanting to move forward with just North St. Paul. And so if we're making decisions that really aren't, there's no weigh-in by anybody other than what you're deciding, are we in any way limiting ourselves to a certain, this is what we want for the city, that might prohibit any of those ideas that are being put forth?
No. What we want for the cities, and again, it goes back to your layering. The code is a reflection of what's in the comprehensive plan. In other words, there are those goals in there, and we don't want, code cannot conflict with the comprehensive plan. So a lot of this is just judgment. You know, and because the comprehensive plan also is the vision that the community
Right, right.
has.
So I'm just curious from my own knowledge, where would you find that in the comprehensive plan?
find what,
The vision? Like
it's in every chapter,
every chapter?
every chapter. Yeah.
From a design perspective?
Well,
Or
that,
aesthetics?
it's a very high-level design.
Okay,
This is street level now.
yep, yep.
But you have to set some standards, or you end up with just stuff that happens to you, instead of trying to say, this is kind of what we want things to look like, and
Got it.
that kind of guidance.
All right, can we,
Nope, Lisa,
Sorry.
Lisa's got something.
And I hear what Lisa is saying. I think, again, it goes back to, like, we are wanting to be a little bit more flexible. If we put limitations now, again, I think that can deter people, business owners, from being very creative. And that's something I think is the direction of North St. Paul. Arts and Culture Commission is, ready to go. And so limitations in the downtown area specifically, I think, may detract businesses, and that's not what we want to do.
But signage isn't going to be one of those typical limitations. You know, I mean, not the way we're trying to do it anyway here. I mean, we are trying not to limit.
Yeah, think of Beale Street.
Pardon me?
Beale Street in
Memphis.
Memphis,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean, not that that's where we want to go,
Right.
but do we want to restrict that? I don't know.
I mean, a lot of what,
If that's like the culture of our downtown,
Right.
then
it's the way
if
it's,
that's what people are coming for, what people will come for all sorts of different things if they're themed, and I think that occurs naturally too.
yeah, when you're talking the aesthetic piece, that's all over the board. People's tastes obviously vary, so you know, what you try to do is not lean too far one way or the other. But I do think our downtown standards for many years were, a little stricter, but then it kind of fell off and just things popped in without a whole lot of thought, maybe is the way to put it, to some of the aesthetics or the limitations that you really need versus the ones maybe you want. Some people want, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I guess it's like whose needs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
do we have an
Is that-
aesthetic right now in downtown?
No.
I mean, it's just pretty much a blank slate right now, how we're
Yeah.
gonna build it.
Yeah.
Kind of the way I look at North St. Paul right now, as
Yep.
far as the downtown, it's kind of just ready to go whatever direction.
Well, I also think sometimes it gets so focused on, well, if we make this big change, when there's a lot of little incremental things that can happen that can also help a whole lot. And sometimes those get lost in the shuffle, so to speak. And I actually do think freeing up the signage a little bit is one of those seemingly little things, but it can make a difference.
I would say probably from the council's perspective, that being a little bit more flexible, particularly in the downtown, is gonna be what we're gonna probably decide. I mean, that's just kind of the discussion. Yeah, we really just want to allow new businesses to come in, do what they need to do.
So when we look back on what we've talked about, is that kind of what the council's looking for? Are we being too restrictive, do you think, or what is your thoughts?
I do think there's a little bit of over-restriction or, over-regulation. I think that it makes it a little bit difficult to also enforce, like we were saying.
You talking about the signage?
Both, yeah, signage.
Well, yeah, I mean, signage is a tough one.
When you said both,
Not both, but like,
It's
let me,
like,
yeah. Let me reframe this. I think overall, if we are over-regulated, we may deter businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if we're gonna put a number on it, it would be, it can't be ambiguous. I think it has to have a reason. So it says 25% here, but why? We have to, make sure that we have a really legitimate reason on why we're regulating it. And when it comes down to aesthetics, that's extremely subjective.
It is,
yeah, like you said, some don't have windows, okay, well,
Yeah.
that makes it, because they don't have windows, and the other ones do, but they choose to have things in it, so, I mean, I understand that, but then also it's just trying, I like the part where we were getting to as far as more maintenance on things. Because
Yeah.
then it becomes, okay, things look crappy, let's get involved. Otherwise, we're gonna be just nitpicking on stuff, so we can try to keep it in that kind of a range. I think that's gonna help everybody.
Yeah, just keep it clean and up, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest aesthetic.
Yeah. Nobody wants to see anything go to disrepair, but then that becomes that catch-all about how long and things like that, because it's Minnesota. We all know that things are gonna wear out and look crappy very quickly in Minnesota. I mean, if you can keep your,
ordinance be written so that it would define when things start to, and I don't know how detailed you need to be, but define how, when it's showing signs of awareness.
There's a little bit of that in the draft that we got as far as the signs go. I remember seeing chipped and, paint wearing off or something. I remember reading,
and those are easy
some
to
language.
enforce, 'cause you just show it to them. Look at that.
The
Sorry.
good news
Yes,
now is that
exactly.
I think Brandy has gotten far enough with the signage ordinance.
Yep.
We can take it and read it, and we're almost there.
Yep.
So now we can do the fine tooth comb analysis and look at the very thing you're talking
Yeah.
about and say, okay, we have this restriction here, this regulation here. Why is it there? Do we really want it?
yeah.
Does it need,
But we aren't making as much new stuff now because of all the work that you've done. So I think we're getting to the point now where we can do that fine tooth comb.
yeah,
So that's the good
There's always gonna be things where you look, it's like today, we had, well, that's kind of saying it in the exact same spot down below, we can move stuff and same thing. Well, we really don't have to get specific on this, because this takes care of it down below.
and
Yeah.
that's
That's
the
the
whole point
catch-all.
behind what you're doing, is
Yeah.
you wanna clean up the code.
That's why it takes
And make it for
time.
businesses, like you said. So I thank you for your input on that. That's helpful, because we want to get businesses.
Well, I think we all know that. And to some degree, they have to kind of leave it up to businesses to know what's going to work.
Yeah, I think
for
most of them wanna
them.
take care of it too. I mean, right now, Newman's, I'm sure those people walk in, and because they've seen that sign up in that window, that neon forever. So I mean, there's
Yeah.
just some character that's been here that makes North St. Paul, North St. Paul.
And they're frogs.
Yep.
Well, and it's just background noise at that point.
I would concur with Lisa that, I don't know, I'm still stuck on the Newman's thing too of that 25%. I know we're gonna chew on it and come back to it. I don't wanna pick a number and then we realize that we've made a bunch of non-conforming businesses
Yeah.
because we picked a number that was lower than what they've already got.
And are we being too random by picking the number?
We gotta really,
Or is there really a reason for it? That's
reason.
important.
businesses know their customers best.
Thanks, Lisa. Really good question.
I mean, people are gonna be like, why?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, really good question.
That's why you're here, because you need to tell us sometimes that, you know what, we're thinking this, because I should probably go more, but I've been to a few council. But yeah, you go on both sides of the fence here, so your input's very important.
And we get deep enough into it, sometimes you just become blind to some of the parameters. It's just, you read it and read it and read it, and then, where were we again? You know, one of those kind of situations.
Well, that's why you read it that's why you get 4 or 5 versions too, because that's when
Yeah.
each time something new comes out, some new
something
question gets raised. That's the reason for doing that.
Yeah, and understand where the council sits with it too, and what we're doing very much helps, because we're here to help the council, that's what we're here for. We take the burden off of them. So, well, thank you. Can we move on to? Do we have
Yes.
time for the furniture,
Well,
do you think, or?
One thing that I can tell you very, very quickly about the downtown furniture design review standards, I did provide in the packet, options as you had asked for. I also noted that we could not define what they need to do, and this follows along the lines of what we've just been talking about, but more define what you don't want. And the reason I say that is because there's such a wide variety, not only variety of different choices, and then we're limiting them on what they can and can't have, but I'm also wondering about, so if we're implementing these design standards, if something were to happen, and this is where my background in insurance comes in, is the city responsible? Would that come back on our errors and omission or a board and director policy that would have to cover any kind of liability with that? And it's just something that we could totally eliminate if you decided to decide what you don't want, or you know what I mean? I did hear Terry Furlong say at one point, we don't want a bunch of plastic furniture downtown.
Right.
You know? And I think that's the whole point behind this.
Right.
If in fact the purpose of this is to set a style, if you want a theme down there, if that is what the city wants and the direction we need to go, then, you know, then we do need the ordinance, and you would have to, I can honestly recommend, I have a background in interior design, but I am not nationally accredited for anything, and we would have to, I would recommend relying on WSB for that information, because there's a lot of, there's the American Society of Interior Designers, which there's a lot of standards around commercial furniture. If we're recommending something to a commercial establishment, there's a reason why an accredited designer would tell you this is why you should buy the $12,000 or $10,000 furniture rather than the $1,000 furniture.
So you're kind of saying, just to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, so so something happens, somebody falls on, you know, the chair breaks, they hit the ground or something like that, well, that's what North St. Paul told us to get, this is what they recommended for furniture. Then does it say, oh, then it goes back towards us, and that's where you get the omissions, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the
So
errors
it's
and
like, well, all we did was what North St. Paul told us to do, we didn't know that
Had
it
to
was,
have this.
didn't know, you know, it was defective or something like that.
Because it was bought on Amazon, and it's not commercial grade. And I'm not saying it's good, bad, or
Sure.
indifferent, but I can see why American Legion chose to go that route. It looks great, it's very affordable, everybody loves it.
It's probably not considered commercial.
I would
furniture.
imagine for the price point, I don't know, I can't
I'd
confirm
be
that.
very surprised about
But
that.
it definitely, and that, you know, I can't determine if it meets commercial grade as far as what our standards are. And I think there's a whole lot involved with that between all of the chain supply and the demand, the cost of materials, the cost of labor. So that's a whole nother thing that comes into the pricing on this furniture. From a high level, someone without the experience of someone that's nationally accredited, that knows what defines these standards, they could say on there, and I think it does say on there, that it is commercial, but we don't know that. And you know what? Maybe this is something that's not even an issue. Maybe chances are so slim, it's not gonna matter. Chances are it would fall under our errors and omission. It's not a big deal. It's something the city would have coverage for if it were to become an issue.
Okay, so is the first question, do we need a theme? Or is the question, do we want a particular,
The survey,
is there some kind of furniture we don't want, like the plastic, as an example?
Definitely not the plastic.
Because it could just blow down the street.
Definitely not.
and here's the controversy. So in past surveys, when we surveyed the public, they chose to go with the antique style. So that's what we chose for, that's what the design review board chose. If we do that, you know, there's a whole element for enforcing it, and there's a lot of buzz about having that creative freedom for allowing the businesses to have freedom to make those decisions.
Right. That's where I'd go. I mean, that gets back to the whole, what's the kind of atmosphere you want? And I don't think it needs to be, everybody has exactly the same
So maybe it could
furniture.
very simply,
I mean, look at Love's already has their little, setup out there.
so we don't have to decide at this meeting. We can definitely wrap it up. It's 9:30. But if you're looking for a recommendation, I would definitely go down the road of this is what we don't want.
So like a lot of these, just real quick, so we're talking about these chairs. Is there much traffic besides Friday night that these chairs are put out for the car show?
Well, they want to have,
I'm sorry?
Hopefully in the future they will.
Yeah, the future, but I'm talking about now with, when it comes to these people want extra seating for Friday nights. Right now, we're not to quite that point yet where maybe that investment is something,
yeah, I think the
they can afford.
conversation originated with the fact that in the downtown redevelopment, and I don't know the word for that, what the project is, but in that plan, there was permanent seating that was removed. So I think that's part of how this whole conversation started.
The
big cement
revitalization plan.
that- Yes, so the big cement seating
Right,
that
right.
would have been around trees or however it was designed.
Right.
So that's not gonna be there any longer. And there's the question of I think the bar owners were asking, well, what are we gonna have then? Instead of that, and then not that they would have their drink area outside, I guess I don't know how that works, but the question came from the bar owners, but there was also the conversation about, well, if the bar owners want this, that they would be purchasing it on their own. So the city wouldn't maintain it, we wouldn't purchase it, we wouldn't replace it if something breaks, we wouldn't have to store it, If the bar owners want these parklets, or excuse me, what was the
Street
word?
cafe, we were.
Yeah, street cafes, if that's what they want, because we no longer have that permanent seating, then it would be up to them to purchase it.
Well, and a part of it was just because of COVID, when they were closed. This was a way for people to eat outside, and they opened up the sidewalk for that, even, before it was changed. But the parklet thing is another piece that extends it into what you'd call the street area typically, so,
It's a little,
but again,
but people also use parklets and put seating in there.
oh, yeah, no, I agree, I agree.
Food as well.
That's what I was
Especially if
thinking,
the
it's not
business
just the
sponsors it.
sidewalk, it's also could be used in that area as well.
But I think a lot of it is just the price. I mean, demand does it. If you do get an outside business, you're gonna
Yeah.
have better seating, and it's probably
Right.
not, it's probably gonna work its way to better stuff, but for somebody to say, well, I gotta fork this out, and maybe something will happen, it may not come around that fast,
Yeah.
I think.
And I think the business makes that decision.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, if they say, hey, you know what, those chairs aren't good, you know, but we're getting business now, we can afford to buy some nicer furniture out there because people are actually sitting outside and the sidewalk and
Yeah.
doing stuff and work its way up instead of saying, okay, we're not gonna supply like we told you we're gonna supply, now you buy your own and we'll tell you what to buy. That doesn't make any sense to me.
no, well, no,
Plastic furniture that,
or maybe,
I would
you know,
think
lawn
also,
chair.
like, probably like food grade, so you wouldn't want like a porous, like, tabletop or something. They probably have some regulations there as a restaurant, if there's a restaurant.
and that would come into the advice from a professional accredited design firm that could tell you, you know, there's reasons, health, safety reasons, that some surfaces should not be used in a commercial setting.
Well, and I wouldn't want to spend a whole lot on getting a study for that, but,
Well, it wouldn't be a study, it would just be a recommendation.
yeah.
It's not something I can provide to you. I can provide color options, I can let you know, the information that's in the packet.
Yeah.
Safe, secure furniture, I mean, that's it, you know, that's.
Yeah, well, and to me, the thing is the, kind of, like you said, the antique or the, you know, the metal-looking stuff is really what the preference was
Back in the
for,
survey when
in
that was-
the survey,
I
exactly.
don't know when that was, and
That was about 2014, 15. It was the same thing. Yeah, it had to be in about that time frame, because I remember there were a lot of places you could go and give your input.
so now that we're developing it down there, do you think that needs to be, the survey needs to be taken again from the
No.
public?
I mean, we're still talking about private business.
Yeah,
So, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it doesn't seem like,
And they're hurting still, they're not making money, the bars and restaurants still haven't recovered, so
Right.
throwing another big cost of them just to get more people.
yeah, I don't think you need a big cost.
The one that said we, you know, because I was trying to get an understanding of what the objective was, and he said, we just don't want the
Right.
plastic weight furniture. I think there was an establishment that was using it, and he's like, you know, we can't
Yeah.
have that.
Was it safety, was he talking about, or what?
No, I think it was aesthetics.
Well, if you're not supplying it, to me, you know,
Is this,
But we
Buy what they wanna
voice an
buy.
opinion about kind of general direction and, you know, the kind of flavor that we're looking to.
yeah, we're looking
Yeah,
to
I
get
mean,
there,
I
but I
don't-
don't think we're there yet, so
We're
we gotta
not
build it before
enforcing.
we get there.
Yeah, but
Can I
if
ask
you
a-
give people a framework in which to work
Right.
within, then they
Yeah.
can kind of,
And we've got
But that
businesses who
framework might
want to
change
do
as-
it.
As it more develops, right?
But we've got businesses who want to do it
Yep.
now and have done it. And are still, like I say, Love's has got furniture out there, so it makes sense to kind of at least give them a clue for this is, you know, what we'd like to see is the approach. I mean, I hate to hesitate and just, well, we've got to wait and know this and that and the other thing. And in the meantime,
Lose another summer.
we got another summer gone. So
is this on public property or is it also on,
it's on the sidewalk. It's
oh, it's all
on,
public?
yes, it is.
Well, I think it's,
And what we did, last year was the picnic tables and stuff, that was fine, but that was far from safe. I mean, it was like a make-do, so,
Can I offer a suggestion or comment? Based on what Lisa had said earlier about being basically business-friendly in the downtown, the whole discussion seems like it could be throwing a little extra difficulty when maybe it doesn't need to. And if there was a desire to make an ordinance amendment, I think we could do that fairly quickly if it was along the lines of like you were suggesting, this is what we don't want to see, and we do want to make sure that it's going to be, I'm not sure what the language is, food grade, I'd have to check with our experts in that, but fairly simple parameters. Can't be this, should be this, and then leave it at that.
Must be.
Well, that would be, which ordinance are we talking about?
I don't know where that would go, but I'm sure we could find a spot for it. No?
Going to be tricky. We don't,
Well, doesn't this whole section belong under some kind of design, whatever the design committee used to do? Where were their
The
ordinances?
design and review committee, was it all?
no, it didn't
guidance?
deal with the sidewalks. That,
Not
A
the
design?
The design standards.
well,
You're suggesting it needs to be in the public realm as opposed to zoning.
well, it is the public realm, yeah. I mean, it's
Right.
public property.
Exactly.
And that gets into the right-of-way kind of
Does that
thing.
belong in the downtown design standards?
It used to, they used to.
I'm trying to think back. Well, I think it mentioned it, but there's not zoning. There's not zoning other than for liquor, if you do a patio.
But you're assuming the responsibility of the design team because they're abolished.
But we are the design team now. Those duties were handed over,
Yep.
so,
I would put something in the downtown design standards.
yeah, when we do them, and in the
And if
interim,
it's someplace other than downtown, then we have to deal with it in some
Yeah.
manner, but.
but we're not gonna be doing that, this week or next week or next
Right.
month, so
We have to do it.
to
quicker
me,
than that.
we
Yes.
need to give some, what businesses need now is just some
Yeah.
high-level guidance on, we don't have any rules for what you need to buy if you want to provide that. But just give them a sense of what, the community would like to see.
Right.
That might be the easiest approach, and just leave it at that for now. And let them do what they're gonna do in the summer.
Two categories, just some general notion of kind of what the design might be.
Right.
And then another section that is, here's some things that you might want to consider. Commercial furniture.
Yeah.
Is more durable, less of a liability,
Yeah.
things along that line. And leave it at that, without specific suggestions, but get some general direction for people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
leave it at
As long
that.
as it's safe and.
Yep, that's what we do, because
Yeah.
nobody's gonna sit inside this, I don't think anybody's gonna eat inside from April until October, because everybody's been trapped, so.
Well, and they liked it anyway, eating outside.
Yeah, oh, good.
So with that being said, I will find out, I'll get direction from our city manager on, how we'll get those, I'm assuming you're relying on staff. That's something staff would do, yeah, so we'll figure it out.
I don't think it needs to be big.
Just like,
A one-pager will probably
yeah.
do it.
Bullet points.
Yep.
here's what we're shooting for,
2 bullet points.
yep. Here's what we're shooting for.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I think we can wrap that up. Reports from staff. All righty, thank you. Reports from council liaison.
One thing I will say tonight is that we've been talking a lot about 36 and 120, and there's a lot of traction, I think, and especially partnerships with our local, cities that also are impacted. I think some of our legislators are really putting, investing in it or trying to, so I think it's moving along, actually,
Oh, good.
at least the discussion.
That's been an urban myth for 20 years.
I mean, it could still be 20 years, but like, they're at least talking about it, because they're looking at doing the entire 120 and all the way down to 94. So the more that we're talking about 36 and 120 and partnering with the other cities, it just elevates its urgency. So it's moving along. I think that's it. Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah. Me?
I know it was somebody from Ramsey County or something at the council meeting to do an update on something? They got to talk, there was some discussion about buses. I didn't see the whole thing. Maybe that was related to 120?
Buses,
Or maybe it was the workshop.
It must have been in the workshop.
yeah.
Okay, because it just triggered in my mind the fact that when the apartments were going in off of McKnight, one of the things the planning commission asked, was if staff could be following up with Ramsey County to continue to look into getting some bus service now that we've got on McKnight along that route, because we've built quite a lot of development there. So I just thought I'd mention that again, because I don't know if has ever been any further discussion on that.
One thing we've run into is the Metro Transit. They are using data like ridership data, and they don't tell us when they're pulling like lines. They just do it.
Well, and I don't know that, there probably isn't a lot of ridership now if there's no bus stop. Ridership, 0. But here's,
That's why it was pulled though.
here's all of this new info, new people.
That they made based off of ridership, because it was there not all that long ago.
Are you talking about on McKnight?
On 7th, I thought you were talking about.
I'm talking McKnight,
Okay.
where we put the new the old Lanker Block area, where we've got bunches of townhomes. They're not far from McKnight. And we've got the apartment building that's, getting completed.
Well, that bus goes down 7th and crosses over south and continues to St. Paul. Isn't that how that route goes usually?
So, I mean, it's like,
We
but,
need to find out if there are no longer stops there because it was determined off of their data.
Older data?
Yeah.
Of course, apartments haven't
We
opened
didn't
yet.
determine it, but we will have to follow up with.
yeah, I mean, it was just one of those kind of, could they investigate now that we've got development going in there, and even the Quick Trip, it's a little grocery store for some people. So, just one of those follow-up things.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it. Staff.
You did staff. You did staff.
I meant commission.
You're going back the other way.
What's wrong with you?
I
You
proved
guys voted, like I told my wife, I says, who's dumber, me or the person that married me? You guys voted me in, so. So look at
Doing
that.
great. You're doing great.
So commissioners, sorry. Anything, boss?
Nothing to report.
How about you, young lady?
Nope.
Nope.
Nothing for me.
All right. Gentlemen?
No.
Eric? Nothing. I did have one asked, maybe you can help me with this. I had a person I know that asked about the old K&J. Is that what it's called? K&J. Is that building still sold and can become an adult thing? Or is that gone through? Because he was talking about if it was still available for like a restaurant or something.
No, to the best of my knowledge, it is still owned by the.
So that sale went through from K&J to the people that wanted the daycare?
Yes, they just haven't opened it up.
Okay, all right, that's all. I'll ask him if the building was, if anything fell through, if anybody's heard or anything like that.
No, it did get transferred.
Okay. All right, well, adjournment.
Motion to
Can I say
adjourn.
the time?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, say the time,
Say the time.
just to make it easy.
9:46. Well, I didn't do much better. Look at that. Everybody
No,
go to bed.
you did not.
Thank you.
But nice job.
Thanks for your help.